Welcome into another edition of the Giant Overreaction. Shout out to the gang for remaining patient today because we were a little bit late. I know Tom Coughlin would not have liked that. I was about a good 2 to 3 minutes late there one time. Had to scarf something down because I feel like this might be a pretty lengthy show, and I did not intend for it to be that way when we were first doing the planning for this show. But there's a lot to talk about today. There was a lot of differences in this game versus the Packers. New York Giants ultimately end up taking another L, and it's not surprising anymore. We understand the dire circumstances that are surrounding this franchise right now. And me personally, at least, I'm going into these games week in and week out with the expectation that the New York Giants are going to lose the game. And that's exactly what happened on Sunday against the Green Bay Packers. Big shout out to everybody that pulled up for the immediate reaction on Bleacher Report right after. There was a lot of people in the building. Definitely could have stayed and streamed during that one for about a couple of hours, but I felt that it wasn't necessary considering the state of the New York Giants. But welcome in to everybody who is not familiar with this content. It is the rawest, realest New York Giants content on the internets. And this game was pretty interesting. Packers come in as 7-point favorites, and that's exactly what they end up winning by in this game. They end up winning 27-20. The Giants had beat the Packers in both of the last two meetings. Brian Dable gets fired literally 7 days before today. Mike Kafka comes in for his first game as the interim head coach for the New York Giants. You get a different head coach, but you get the exact same results. And the Giants end up losing this one. Another loss here in a game where the New York Giants did score a decent amount of points here at 20, but the Giants have now lost 5 games in a row. And the Packers' losing streak ends at 2 games, and they improve to 6-3-1 on the season. Definitely looking like the Green Bay Packers are headed towards the playoffs here, but the New York Giants, things are not getting any easier as they fall to 2-9, and we got the Lions on deck next week. They're coming in with a 6-4 record, pretty pissed off with the loss that they had last night on Sunday Night Football to the Philadelphia Eagles, and then the following week after that, we're going to have the New England Patriots, who are going to be, coming in as at least a 9-win team. So this New York Giants team right now that is sitting at 2-9 is looking like in about 2 weeks they're going to be a 2-11 team. And I did see my dog B-Rog in the chat talking about how he was surprised that Shane Bowen has not been fired yet. And I agree with that statement right there. I thought that news was going to break before we went live. You could see some of the beat reporters and some of the people covering the team kind of like throwing out just little Easter eggs that there's a good chance that Shane Bowen was ultimately going to be fired. Now, last week, Connor Hughes did come out and say that Mike Kafka is now responsible for, who's going to be fired from this point on. And the reason why Shane Bowen was still the defensive coordinator for the New York Giants was largely in part due to Mike Kafka. Now, the Giants, this is another game where the second half struggles are continuing. Outscored 14-7 in the second half, but this is one thing that I think that's going around on social media right now that might be a little bit incorrect or just a little bit of a ridiculous rhetoric being thrown around is that we blew another lead. The Giants' one lead in this game was 20-19 with 7 minutes and 22 seconds left in the fourth quarter. That was when Green Bay got the ball back. The only reason why the New York Giants had that 1-point lead in the first place was because Green Bay's kicker could not make an extra point to save his life. But the defense still does continue to look lost. And the offense we saw on Sunday, it actually reminded me a lot of the 2024 offense that was led by Drew Lock for the most part. But the Giants now have 5 consecutive games where they have scored 20 points but still come away with a loss. And that is the second most games in a row with 20-plus points but consecutive losses since 1970. The San Francisco 49ers went 6 straight games in 1999 with Jim Moore Jr. as their defensive coordinator. Steve Mariucci was the head coach. He was ultimately fired in 2002, just 3 years after that. Surprisingly, Jim Moore Jr. stayed on the 49ers coaching staff for another year. So although this was all going on in 1999 in San Francisco where they had 6 straight games where they scored 20 points and came away with losses, the defensive coordinator was not fired. But I still thought that this was enough reason for the Giants to go out there and, just move off of Shane Bowen as the defensive coordinator right now. The Giants now have 4 losses when they have held a fourth quarter lead, tied for the most in the NFL with the Arizona Cardinals. So just a lot more doom surrounding the New York Giants right now, and we are just a franchise right now that just cannot get right. But I did tweet this out before I went live today, maybe a couple hours before the show today, that I am at least grateful because sometimes when you think about that grass on the other side, it's not always greener. And I am at least grateful to be a New York Giants fan over a Cleveland Browns fan, because the rhetoric, the narrative, the turmoil, the delusion surrounding that fan base, our fan base cannot hold a candle to that. So I am at least, appreciating the grass on my lawn right now as a New York Giants fan, considering that maybe when we get off into next season, there are some things that are showing some signs of hope. But let's get off into breaking down this game. I'm definitely looking forward to doing a short breakdown here. There aren't going to be any true Giant overreactions today, but there will be statements you see on the screen that, will, I guess you can go one way or the other as far as if they are overreactions or not. But let's get off into this one. The Green Bay Packers had traveled to MetLife to take on the New York Giants.
From the jump. We have another opportunity. Put that the line. That's on three. That's on me. 1, 2, 3. It's too beautiful out here. Wasting opportunity. Come on, inside the tall for the first half. Just go ahead. Let's go. Let's fight for each other. Here we go.
All right, let's briefly go over this game real quick. I'm sure you guys are all too familiar already with how this game went down, but the Giants scored on the opening drive. First opening drive touchdown that the Packers have given up all year long. It was, in fact, the first quarter touchdown that the Packers have given up all year. And the Giants go 9 plays, 65 yards. Devin Singletary touchdown. We're feeling really good about ourselves, but Giants fans have definitely been accustomed to this type of play on the first drive over the last, numerous weeks, to be honest here. We've found a way to score on our first drive in a ton of games this season. I think in the last 8 games, there's only 2 games where the New York Giants did not score on the opening drive. And we talked about this on the preview show about how the first drive is important, but what will be even more important is the drives that come to follow that. And the New York Giants really just didn't follow that up with a lot of success. We saw Jordan Love leave the game in the second quarter dealing with a shoulder injury. Malik Willis came in and found Christian Watson for the first touchdown of 2 on the day for Christian Watson. And the Green Bay Packers kicker ends up missing the extra point, and they go up 7-6 on the New York Giants. It was 13-13 at the half. Now, the Giants on that first drive, you get 65 yards on the first drive on 9 plays. For the rest of the half, they ended up having 18 plays, and they only got 73 yards for the rest of that first half. Only 4 possessions in the first half for the New York Giants, and that was the theme throughout this game, is that I thought both defenses did a good job of keeping the opposing quarterback on the sidelines and off the field. And this was really a game that was predicated around RTDB throughout the entirety of this game, to be honest. The injury that Josh Jacobs suffered in this game was really the turning point in this game. But the Packers scored on their first drive in the second half, set up by pass interference on Dane Belton, who I thought Dane Belton played not a good game, not a great game or anything like that. But I thought that when you looked at the way that the secondary approached stopping the run and just overall play from Dane Belton, I do feel a little bit more comfortable having Dane Belton out there on the at the opposite safety with Javon Holland over Tyler Nubin, who was out in this game dealing with an injury, which might be a good benefit for him because he's been struggling as of late. But Jordan Love ended up finding Josh Wiley wide open on the right side of the field there. The Packers kicker missed his second extra point, and the Packers took the lead 19-13. The Giants came back down with a big answer, big screen from Tyrone Tracy, and then after a penalty, Jameis Winston connected with Theo Johnson for a manageable fourth down, which I thought was one of the bigger plays of the game. And we got another fourth down conversion from Isaiah Hodgins, who had another one previously in the first half as well. He had a really good game. We're going to break down some of his numbers as well. And then Jameis Winston took it in for a quarterback sneak. The Giants take their first and only lead of the game, 20-19, with 7 minutes left in the game. Packers get the ball back. 3rd and long, which is something we talked about on the preview show as well. Jordan Love hits Savion Williams for a huge play on 3rd and long. And the statistic that we brought up on the preview show is that the Packers came into Week 11 converting first downs on 21 of their 49 plays on 3rd and long this season, which was best in the NFL. Jordan Love comes back down, hits Christian Watson on a perfect fade ball for a touchdown, which was maybe one of the better throw and catches of the year. I mean, when I think about high-level precision from the quarterback position, when I think about big boy NFL level type of receptions, those are the kind of plays that I think about. It was a great throw in a tight window. Javon Holland kind of coming over the top there, gets there a little bit late, but Jordan Love's throw made it where it was basically impossible for our defender to make a play on the ball. Christian Watson hauls in his second touchdown of the day. The 2-point conversion is good on a pass from Jordan Love, and the Green Bay Packers go up 27-20. The Giants got a couple of more chances there late. We thought it was going to be one. They ended up getting 2 chances. Hyatt and Jameis Winston not really on the same page. You get the interception on the left side where Jalen Hyatt was running a corner route, bit of a flag route there, kind of gave up on the route. Jameis Winston throws it with a little bit of anticipation. Easy interception for the defender there. But then the Giants had 3 timeouts, so they got one more chance to kind of heave a Hail Mary down there towards the end zone. Jameis Winston was trying to buy a little bit of time, and he ended up getting hit by Michael Parsons and fumbled the ball, and that was all she wrote. The New York Giants end up losing this game 27-20. Now, I do want to tap into Jameis Winston's numbers real quick. We did do this on the Bleacher Report stream yesterday, but just to kind of give you guys a bit of a gauge of what it looked like from a box score standpoint, because we know that box score numbers are very different than when you actually watch the game. And the one thing that stood out for me immediately in this game as I was tracking the numbers down the stretch and getting ready for the Bleacher Report stream was Jameis Winston's quarterback rating plummeted from over 90 to the number you see on the screen right now at 71.2, literally on the last drive. Jameis Winston, we've talked about this, me and the Beard, over the years when we have talked about Jameis Winston and a multitude of other quarterbacks who suffer from this as well. Once they get down on the scoreboard or once the game gets into those crunch, clutch moments and they're down on the scoreboard, these are the type of quarterbacks that go out there and try to do just a little bit too much. And I think with Jameis Winston, there weren't really many options there at the end of the game. You got to go out there and try to get a touchdown. I thought he was doing a good job of maneuvering and moving the ball down the field. But, down there in the end, just getting a little bit aggressive and not having the necessary reps with these wide receivers who, one, are not guys that Jameis Winston is accustomed to having reps with, but 2, these guys aren't even the starters for the New York Giants. You had literally 2 wide receivers on the outside that had not started for the New York Giants basically all season long. But I thought Jameis Winston had a pretty good day, to be honest. I thought throughout the day he took care of the ball. You look at Winston's last start, it was on December of 2024, where he was 16-25 with 3 interceptions. That was his last start with the Cleveland Browns. So this is definitely a step in the right direction. He was much better yesterday, 19 of 29, 201 yards, no touchdowns through the air, 1 interception late. He had the quarterback rating of 71.2, 1 rushing touchdown. He was sacked just 2 times on the day, and he had a QBR of 59.1. The number that stands out the most for me with Jameis Winston is that he was only sacked 2 times on the day. And that speaks volumes for what we've been seeing with Jackson Dart at the quarterback position, in contrast to what we saw with Russell Wilson at the quarterback position, where lacking that kind of decisive decision-making really had Russell Wilson getting himself into a lot of trouble. But Jameis Winston was the 3rd most pressured quarterback in Week 11, 48.4. By no surprise, the number 1 quarterback who was pressured the most in Week 11 was Shedeur Sanders. But Jameis Winston, 15 quarterback pressures on 31 dropbacks. His time to throw was the 3rd fastest in the NFL this past week at 2.5 seconds. So he's doing a good job of getting rid of that ball quick and being decisive. And for the most part, I thought he was pretty accurate on the day. The Green Bay Packers blitzed him on 25.8% of their dropbacks. But this is the thing. Under pressure, Jameis Winston was really amazing in this game. And these are the kind of numbers that you don't have privy to you when you're watching the game live, obviously. So when you go back and you look at the numbers, whether it be with PFF or Next Gen Stats, to find out that Jameis Winston completed 10 of 13 attempts for 124 yards when under pressure, that is absolutely amazing for a guy like Jameis Winston that is not known for his mobility or for his ability to buy time from the quarterback position. He was 9 of 16 for 77 yards with an interception when he wasn't pressured. In my opinion, both of these numbers support Jameis Winston playing pretty decent ball throughout the day. The interception, in my opinion, is not on Jameis Winston. You could argue whether or not it was on Jalen Hyatt or not. But I think that late in a game like that, you want your quarterback being aggressive. You don't want your quarterback being too timid. Surprisingly, this was one thing that I thought Jameis Winston was going to do in this game that he didn't do, which was throw the ball deep. 3.4% of his passes were deep shots. Only Davis Mills of the Houston Texans, who got to start over C.J. Stroud because he's injured this past week, had less attempts over 20 yards in week 11. Davis Mills, only 2.4% of his attempts were over 20 yards. But I just expected Jameis Winston to go out there and throw the ball deep down the field. But I do think a lot of that speaks volumes to Mike Kafka taking over as the head coach and, not having Brian Daboll out there, influencing what we're doing offensively. But there wasn't a lot of play action in this game either, and I noticed that live. And when I went and I looked at the numbers, the play action numbers looked even worse than I thought they were live. But the Giants only ran play action on 9.7% of their plays, which was 28th of the 32 quarterbacks who started this past week. Now, keep in mind that the Giants have operated out of shotgun for the majority of the season. 80.9% of their plays are out of the shotgun. Kind of reminds me of the Washington Commanders, who are operating 95% of the time out of shotgun, but you're not going to see a lot of play action out of the shotgun all that much, especially when you don't have a quarterback that has that dual threat capability, because then a lot of the RPO and read option stuff kind of goes out the window. But what I liked from Jameis Winston was he played within structure for the majority of the day. And his ability of just knowing when to try to extend the plays and knowing when a play is over and just to give up on that play. A lot of young quarterbacks can learn from that. When you see Jameis Winston go out there and play the way that he has played, I think that some of that is I'm trying to avoid a pause here for a second, but some of that is influencing Jackson Dart and the way that Jackson Dart has approached the game as well. Loved Jameis Winston's poise on fourth down. That was something I spoke about on Bleacher Report. When you see a guy go out there on fourth down and just you feel confident about him actually, being able to convert on fourth down, that was a great thing. And just not forcing throws. Limited at the wide receiver position, Jameis Winston went out there and he did not force too many throws into windows that had you scratching your head. There were a couple of them for sure. A couple of passes could have been intercepted earlier on in the game as well. But I thought Jameis Winston did a good job keeping the ball out of harm's way. And we talked about that on the preview show as well, that was going to be one of the biggest things to Jameis Winston's game was not turning the ball over. And this game went all the way down to the wire, all the way down to the last minutes of the fourth quarter. And I think that played a big part in it. Now, to talk about what I didn't like from Jameis Winston, he has, some kind of tendency where he just wanted to throw the ball to the right a ton. I was going to bring up the pass chart from Next Gen, but I figured, we'll just skip that. But 3 of his 19 completions were to the left side. So he's basically neglecting the left side of the field. Just 8 of his 29 attempts were to the left side as well. Few could be interceptions throughout the day. That kind of bothered me about Jameis Winston as well. And just 1 attempt over 20 yards. That's not going to get it done for a guy like Jameis Winston, who truly thrives off the big play and the explosive plays. The Giants needed those explosive plays in the middle of this game to be able to have a more likely opportunity to put the ball in the end zone. But they were pretty decent on the day, in the red zone. But I do want to talk about 12 personnel just a little bit here, because Mike Kafka and Brian Daboll approached the play calling and, most importantly, the personnel tendencies were a lot different in this game. Now, the Giants came into this game running 12 personnel a ton this season. That's been one of their staples since Malik Neighbors went down with the injury, was that they shifted to the 12 personnel, which is 2 tight ends on the field, 1 running back on the field. And at times we saw a lot of 13 personnel. And as you're seeing on the screen there, the Giants have ran more plays out of 12 personnel than any other team in the NFL. It's not by a huge margin. The Giants have ran 708 plays out of 12 personnel. I want to say the next 2 teams were about within 10 12 personnel plays within the New York Giants. Now, on Sunday versus the Packers, and I just looked at the All-22 before we went live, and just kind of looked at the personnel groupings and just looked at the dropbacks from Jameis Winston. Jameis Winston had 31 dropbacks. 20 of the 31 dropbacks were not in 12 personnel. Now, that is focusing on simply the passing perspective of the New York Giants out of 12 personnel, not the rushing perspective. But Mike Kafka, when it came to throwing the ball, he seemed to want to operate more out of 3 wide receiver sets. I honestly think that was a big reason why we went out there and brought in Isaiah Hodgins from the Pittsburgh Steelers practice squad as well. And I think that if Lil Jordan Humphrey was not claimed by, where did he go? I can't remember where Lil Jordan Humphrey went, but whoever claimed him, I don't think that, that would have happened. I think that Mike Kafka would have likely elevated Lil Jordan Humphrey to the 53-man active roster if a team had not signed him. Instead, when a team signed him off our practice squad, I think the panic move was to go to Isaiah Hodgins, somebody that Mike Kafka's familiar with from the 2022 season that had a lot of success, and he did have a lot of success in this game. No Darius Slayton, no Malik Neighbors on the outside. The Giants are really strapped at the wide receiver position right now, with Darius Slayton in particular, being inconsistent as far as his health goes and his play on the field. But starting Jalen Hyatt and Isaiah Hodgins on the outside, if you would have told me that when we were talking about this during the preview show on Thursday, I absolutely would have not picked the New York Giants to win this game. And even with that information not privy to me, I still didn't pick the New York Giants to win this game. Now, Isaiah Hodgins, fresh off the Steelers practice squad, came in basically off the streets and led the New York Giants in receptions and in receiving yards. That goes to show you the type of deficiencies that the New York Giants have in that particular unit. He had the 5 receptions for 57 yards. He was on the field for 25 pass plays on the day. He got 6 targets, and he was averaging 11.4 yards per reception. It's a really good job from Isaiah Hodgins, and he was a player that I thought really could not make a large impact on this New York Giants team. We'll see how that goes moving forward. I mean, 5 receptions is not all that great. I want to say Tyrone Tracy had a similar number as far as his receptions on the day as well. But if you can continue to be consistent like that, that's definitely going to be something that can, enable this offense to be that much better, especially with the injuries that we're having at that position. Now, Jalen Hyatt, 2 receptions for 18 yards on the day. He was on the field for just about the same amount of pass plays as Isaiah Hodgins. He was there for 26. Hodgins was there for 25. But Jalen Hyatt only had 4 targets on the day. And the big one that everyone's talking about is the last interception, which, Jalen Hyatt goes to run. I don't even know what he's running there. Maybe it looked like a little bit of a clear out type of route where he was just trying to be a decoy. But when you get down there in the green zone like that, you got to have your head on a swivel. And he did turn around and look at the quarterback, but I thought he opened up to the inside. Jameis Winston throws it to the outside. We'll never truly know what was really going on that play. Jameis Winston came out and took basically full responsibility for it, but when breaking it down, alluded to just not being on the same page, not having the chemistry with these guys that he's not getting a lot of reps with. But one thing I noticed when I was looking at the All-22 today is that the Giants ran the same play twice in the green zone. And I want to show you Jalen Hyatt in particular. I should have circled him on these plays, but he is at the bottom of the screen, I believe. Or let me see, we're going. Yeah, he's at the bottom of the screen on both of these plays. Keep your eye out for him. And he's in a stack situation with Wan'Dale Robinson. But just look at how he runs the route on the first play, which was in the first quarter. And then look at how he runs the route on the second play, which was down there at the end of the game. Here are the 2 clips right here so you can just judge it for yourself. Prepare your eyes. Be ready. Hyatt's at the bottom of the screen, and both plays will be played back-to-back here. Here's the inside of the field, and maybe try to find a way to get on the same page with Jameis Winston. But the results end up being that Jameis Winston ends up throwing his first interception of the day. The difficult part about this for me was Mike Kafka, and I understand you are strapped for personnel here, and a lot of these guys have not played together. A lot of these guys have not been in the starting lineup, and there's just a lack of experience there. But the one thing that bothered me just a little bit about it was that the Giants had 5 pass plays inside the Green Bay Packers 30-yard line. 2 of the plays were exactly the same. 2 of the other plays, and I was going to show these, but I just didn't think it'd be worth it. But 2 of the other plays run a very similar concept, except it's almost like you're trying to bait the defensive backs into thinking that you're going to run what you saw on those 2 plays there where you get the flag and the flat route. And instead, one of them, the flat turns into a wheel route, and the route from Jalen Hyatt turned into a post route. So it seemed like Mike Kafka was trying to play some mind games with the defensive coordinator, Jeff Hafley, over there with the Green Bay Packers, and it just truly wasn't working. But the red zone results were pretty decent. The Giants were 3 for 5 in the red zone. That's not all that bad, but I am a little bit concerned about the redundancy in the play calling there. But I guess you got to chalk it up to new quarterback with a new set of weapons on the outside going up against a very, very capable Green Bay Packers defense. But it was something that I just wanted to bring up on the stream so you guys can see that at least that's not something consistently that Jalen Hyatt, is running the routes that particular way. Some people have questioned if possibly there was an option route designed into that. Amani Toomer was somebody that came out and spoke about it and said that in all his years running a flag or 7 or a post corner, whatever you want to call it, there was never any type of option route built into that. But the little bit of pushback I would give to that is that Amani Toomer played in a time, where the game has changed a little bit. But I do take Amani Toomer's word, that he's not up here lying or nothing about that. But I do think that when you look at the way that Brian Dable's offense was designed, previous to Mike Kafka taking over as the head coach, we all know that there was a lot of complexity within that offense as far as option routes being designed and, one-word terminologies for all of the wide receivers to know exactly what they were going to do. So these are the type of things that I just don't necessarily, pick one side or the other, because basically it's all speculation at this point. Unless you're in there in those meetings with the New York Giants, it's really hard to tell whether or not, what Jalen Hyatt's responsibility is there and who made the mistake on the play. But I figured I would at least give you guys as much data as I have on it and break it down as best as I could. Now, the other thing is that Mike Kafka committed to the run in a major way. And this was a stark difference between the way Brian Daboll approaches stuff. It almost seemed like when Brian Daboll was coaching the game, if the running attack was not averaging a certain amount of yards per carry, or we were not getting the necessary success through running the ball, then it was an easy way for Brian Daboll to abandon that run. With Mike Kafka, although the Giants in the first half really did not have a lot of success running the ball, Mike Kafka did not abandon the run. To see both of our running backs that are leading this running back by committee to be over 15 rushing attempts was actually amazing to me. And y'all know over here, we preach RTDB, and the Beard is always talking about those numbers of 35, even getting up to 40 rushes a game. And to see Tyrone Tracy and Devin Singletary, leave this game with 35 rushes combined, that's a beautiful thing. And more importantly, Tyrone Tracy getting back on track. He had 19 rushes for 88 yards in this game, averaging 4.6 yards per carry. 4 receptions for 51 yards on 4 targets, too. And that's something that I think not a lot of people are talking about, or not enough people are talking about, is Tyrone Tracy's ability to be an asset in the passing attack as well. And he has proven that. Even when he was on the streak of 14 straight games where he did not breach 60 rushing yards, he still had a couple of games where he showed a lot of success in the passing attack. It was just on the ground where he had struggled. But 132 yards from scrimmage, that's amazing right there from Tyrone Tracy. The Giants totaled 336 total yards in this game, and that means that Tyrone Tracy was 39.2% of the New York Giants offense. That's a lot of offense right there from one player at the running back position. And if you could consistently get that from Tyrone Tracy, that would be amazing. And I think that the New York Giants rushing attack will be in a much better place. But those are some of the reasons why running back by committee, I'm a little split on running back by committee, but it's good to see Tyrone Tracy back-to-back games over 70 yards after going 14 straight without breaching 60. And Devin Singletary added to the equation as well, too. Not a great clip per carry, right? Like 2.8 yards per carry is not that great, but the commitment to the run is what I liked. 16 rushes, 44 yards, and they used him around the goal line in a major way. He had 2 touchdowns on the day. And we couldn't ask for more out of this rushing attack. You could hear it consistently on the broadcast throughout this game. Both announcers steadily saying that the Giants are putting themselves in perfect position right now. This is the best that they could be doing with the personnel that they have and the way that we attack the run. Loved what I saw from Mike Kafka in this offense. Another nugget here. Against the Packers, Tyrone Tracy and Devin Singletary combined for 132 rushing yards and 2 touchdowns, running inside the tackles on 68.6% of their attempts. That is New York Giants football right there. And I love to see it right there. And this was another stat that it's very alarming, to be honest. But the Giants running backs were hit behind the line of scrimmage on just 4.2% of their attempts versus Green Bay in week 11. When you look at the total from weeks 1 through 10, the Giants running backs were not hit, tackled behind the line of scrimmage on 47.9 of their attempts. That is a drastic difference. So love what I'm seeing from the rushing attack with Mike Kafka. Granted, it was just one small sample size, one game versus the Green Bay Packers. There was definitely an improvement here without your best running back on the roster in Cam Scatterbo dealing with the ankle injury. You got to give Mike Kafka his props on that. I saw a lot of people saying it was exactly the same. There were a few little, minute details that I noticed from Mike Kafka as calling, this game as the head coach that were a little bit different than what we saw from him as the offensive coordinator. But again, I'm just not really a fan of running back by committee, especially when that running back by committee is without a premier talent. And when I look at Devin Singletary and Tyrone Tracy in particular, I don't look at them as premier running backs in this league. But keeping your running backs clean before they get to the line of scrimmage, the way that the New York Giants offensive line did in this game, that's exactly how you see success when you utilize a running back by committee that does not have a superstar running back that is front running for that unit. So loved what I saw, literally loved what I saw out of this rushing attack. And I just think like if Kafka can build upon that, it'll yield much better results going into next season. I see Arturo Perez is in the chat one time. He says, authentic, would you keep Kafka? Personally, I would not keep Kafka. He's a part of a losing way, and that's the number one reason. It's nothing personal against Mike Kafka, even if he does a great job to finish out the season. We've seen this offense underneath Mike Kafka now for 2 of the 4 seasons calling the plays. I think that speaks volumes into his capability of what he brings to the New York Giants offense. But right now, I think the New York Giants need a more seasoned, experienced, veteran type of coach, or a coach that just comes from one of the coaching trees that you know is respected and has that necessary offensive output that we've seen over the years from the offenses like Sean McVay and the offenses like Kyle Shanahan as well. So for me personally, it's nothing against Mike Kafka. I just wouldn't keep Mike Kafka personally right now. But I think he did a pretty decent job in this game. Had he have found a way to get that W late in this one, it would have had me leaning a little bit more towards, at least this week, towards Mike Kafka, doing a good job as the head coach and possibly bidding for a way to get back, in this locker room next season. But I really don't think that's going to be a thing, to be honest. I think by the time we get to the end of the year, the Giants have already talked about that Joe Shane's going to lead the next head coach search. You don't put that stuff out there if you really, truly plan on bringing Mike Kafka back. The other thing I want to talk about here, too, is the pass rush, the pressure or the lack of the pressure on Jordan Love, which the Giants generated some pretty decent pressure in this game. That is a fact. But the biggest problem with the New York Giants is their inability to turn the pressures into sacks, and that has been the theme over the season. And hang with me. This is going to be a bit of a long-winded segment here because I kind of want to go full circle, take you guys all the way back to the preseason one time when we were talking about our concerns about this defensive line. And I know a lot of people didn't agree with us on it, but I want to take y'all full circle all the way back to August to where we are right now. And what you were seeing on the screen is a statement from my homie Frank on Twitter, who tagged me and a few other content creators. I want to say it was like Dan Schneier, Carl Banks, and a few others. I didn't see anybody else answer it except me, and also Da'Illa chimed in as well because I tagged Da'Illa in it because it's something that me and Da'Illa have been talking about basically for the entirety of the season here, preseason, all of that. We've been talking about this maybe since last year, to be honest, and about the archetype that we have outside on the edge. But when we're talking about pressure on Jordan Love, we'll start there because this is going to kind of morph into the running game as well. If you want to play the giant overreaction game here on this statement on the screen, do your thing. You tell me why you think it is, whatever. It doesn't matter. We're not going to harp on the overreactions today because we're breaking down a team that is extremely pathetic at this moment in time. But last week, Jordan Love was the 8th most pressured quarterback last week. That was going up against the Philadelphia Eagles. And that was a very close game. They had success definitely putting pressure on Jordan Love. They didn't even score over 14 points. I think the Packers left that game with 10 points in that game. Now, this week, Jordan Love was the 4th most pressured quarterback, and the number is almost identical. It's 41.4% this week against the New York Giants. It was 40.5% against the Philadelphia Eagles last week. But the Giants generated 12 total pressures on the day. The Giants defense came into week 11, and we broke this down on the preview show, with the 7th most pressures in the NFL at 130. 103 of the 130 pressures are from Brian Burns, Kayvon Thibodeau, and Abdul Carter. Each of them had 30 or more pressures coming into week 11. But the big head scratcher for me on the preview show was the Giants' pressure rate is 22nd in the NFL at 32.6%. But here we are as one of the teams that is near the top when you talk about total pressures. And I just kept telling myself that something is not adding up. And we talked about this on Bleacher Report yesterday briefly as well, and I got a couple other nuggets I'm going to add to it here. But the Giants are the only team with 4 players in the NFL's top 12 in pass rushes this season. So the amount of reps that they are getting to be able to have a chance to even go after a quarterback that is passing the ball, the New York Giants are the only team with 4 players in the NFL's top 12. No other team has more than 1 player in the top 13. And only 3 teams have 2 players in the top 20. That still makes me scratch my head because you would think that the way that the New York Giants have lost about half of their games, the opposing team is controlling the clock, running the ball late in games, but yet and still the New York Giants have more pass rush attempts from 4 guys than any other team in the National Football League. It really does not add up, and it doesn't make any sense. But most importantly, it's just more proof that, yeah, pressures mean something, and sacks mean something as well. But together, they mean everything. If you are constantly generating pressures and you're not getting quarterbacks on their back, it's all for nothing. If you can get those sacks, they're going to look great. And getting to the quarterback is more important than anything else. Pressures are cool, but at the end of the day, and a lot of people might think this is a casual take, that sacks are more important than pressures. At the end of the day, for me, I think sacks are more important than pressures, because sacks, you're going to have quarterbacks losing yardage, setting up opposing offenses to have non-manageable second and third down type of situations where they're looking at second and long, third and long. And those are the type of situations that will set up your defense for success. But because the New York Giants are not able to get these quarterbacks on their back, then you're looking at second and third down being way more manageable situations for the opposing team. Now, Jordan Love, when you looked at the box score, it don't look that great. But he absolutely played a fantastic game. He finished 13 of 24 for 173 yards, 2 touchdowns, no picks, a QB rating of 105. He had at least 5 drops on the day, most of the drops from Romeo Doubs. He led Week 11 in air yards per attempt at 13.2 yards per attempt. And a quarter of his throws in this game were deep shots. So we're looking at 25% of his throws being deep down the field. The Giants blitzed him on 33.3% of his dropbacks, and he still had hella success in this game. A lot of these incompletions were not by the doing of the New York Giants defense. It was more by the doing of the wide receiver core for the Green Bay Packers, just in straight up struggle mode. I don't know what was going on with Romeo Doubs in this game, but the drops were piling up. You had the Luke Musgrave drop at the end of the first half, which literally looked like a fumble to me. I thought that the referees definitely got that one wrong, and that could have really flipped the position going into the locker room at the half. But all in all, the Green Bay Packers were straight up selling Jordan Love in this game. Now, Abdul Carter was not on the field for the opening possession. And I saw on Twitter, from the content creators to the fan base to everybody and their mother, talking about how Shane Bowen is the one to blame. How the fuck can you have one of your best players on the sidelines to start the game and you got Timon Fox in the game? I saw a ton of ignorant statements. And when I say ignorant, I don't mean that to throw shade at anybody. I'm literally using the definition of the word ignorant, where you don't have the information, but you want to speak loudly about what is happening. So for me, in real time, I tweeted out so many strong opinions on Abdul Carter not starting today. I'll wait to hear what the reason is before irrationally reacting. Now, so many different comments about Timon Fox being on the field. The crazy part about Timon Fox is he had the highest quarterback pressure rate of all of the New York Giants in the entire game at 20%. Now, that does come with a bit of an asterisk because it was just 1 pressure on 5 pass rush attempts. But nonetheless, his percentage was higher than every other player. Dexter Lawrence generated a pass rush win rate of 19.2% with 5 pressures on 26 pass rush attempts. Brian Burns generated 4 pressures on 24 pass rush attempts, which is 16.7%. He also had 2 TFLs, 1 sack. He was the only player on the New York Giants that had a TFL in this game, and the only player on the New York Giants, I believe, to have a sack. I think there was actually a second player that might have had a sack. Roy Robertson Harris, I like what he has brought to the table for the New York Giants. He generated 3 pressures on 18 pass rush attempts. That is 16.7% as well. Abdul Carter, 2 pressures on 24 pass rush attempts, 8.3% pass rush win rate. All of that's cool, but most importantly, Dan Duggan came out and reported this. He said, sources said Giants rookie linebacker Abdul Carter was benched for the opening drive of yesterday's loss against the Green Bay Packers for missing a walkthrough. He said Carter was asleep in the team facility at the time of the walkthrough. Now, he said sources. I know a lot of times when a proven beat reporter like Dan Duggan comes out and they say sources say this, people take word as, hey, that's 100% facts. That's what it is. Again, I'm not going to sit up here and ignorantly be blind to the facts because I don't have the facts here, right? But Abdul Carter came out and he said, when the hate don't work, they start telling lies. I don't know who's telling the truth in this one. Who knows? Abdul Carter's a young dude. Dan Duggan is an OG that's been on the beat report for a long time. I don't know if the information he's getting is 100% accurate or not. But Abdul Carter, I don't know if he's lying or not. But that is what is coming out from the player and what is coming out from the beat. Now, to get back to this statement on the screen here, Our buddy, I'm telling you about, my buddy Frank, that tagged us in this statement that said, when will the Giants realize that Abdul Carter physically isn't suited to be an every down edge rusher in the NFL? Now, there's a lot to break down in that, because just because a player is not suited to be an every down edge rusher in the NFL as a rookie, it doesn't necessarily mean that he can't get there. But with that said, these are concerns that we brought up a long time ago. We brought this up on the Giant overreaction before the season started in August. It was after the Jets preseason game. Remember, Abdul Carter had got caught up on that chip block, kind of got blindsided, taken off his feet, and we were talking about this was a welcome to the NFL type of moment, and that it was going to be a learning moment for Abdul Carter. And the tweet that we had talked about during that time about questioning Abdul Carter and what he could bring to this defense from an interior portion, playing a little bit of three-tech at the D-tackle position as well, but also what he brings to the table as an every down linebacker. I'll bring back the overreaction that we brought up here back in August. The Illa said the Giants bring in small package with Abdul Carter inside on 3rd and long. The Jets run right at him and convert. And the Illa is probably the first person that I heard talking about a edge rusher who is at 245, 250 pounds don't work. I copied the exact tweet because I remember I paraphrased it on the graphic here. The Illa said this on Twitter. He said the Giants go small package with Abdul Carter inside on 3rd and long. What happens? The Jets offense runs right at him and converts. And he said 250 pounds inside don't work. When we did the overreaction, I took the push. I said I wanted to see more reps from Abdul Carter, but thus far what we are seeing is not enough to at least, one, have a clear, concise evaluation, but also it's looking like it's trending towards that way. Too much speed on the outside of this defense is something that y'all know I've talked about a ton on this channel, maybe every week on this channel, literally. We talk about Kayvon Thibodeau and we talk about Brian Burns and how both of those guys are basically built the exact same way, and how that's not going to yield good results when going up against the run. I even went back and looked at a clip because I took this statement. I was so invested in this statement from the Illa when he said it. I took the clip from the Giant overreaction on August 18th, and I brought it over to the social media side of things on Twitter, and I said, let's play a little game of Giant overreaction over here on Twitter. And I posted the clip, and this is the quote that I said verbatim on that day. I said, for this season to go the way that we all want it to go, the pass rush has to get home. If we want to see our secondary go out there and play at a higher level than what we saw in 2024 and see these free agent signings live up to the contracts that they signed, it all starts with the pass rush getting home. I didn't know that the New York Giants front was going to have trouble getting home in this season. We're talking about a team that has now 23 sacks on the season, and Brian Burns has 12 of those sacks. That is more than half of the sacks for the New York Giants. I think the next man in line is still Kayvon Thibodeau with 2.5 sacks. Now, the Illa, you know, I love it when I see my content creator homies go out there, extend their voice, and respond to all of these comments that are on social media, because at times you can be tagged in so many different things that you see a lot of content creators avoid, you know, those discussions. And rightfully so, because a lot of people on social media are just miserable assholes, to be honest. And you kind of got to stay guarded a little bit. But I like to engage with the people that I, you know, when I see the name, I recognize the name. And when I saw Frank's Twitter handle, I was like, oh, we've had a bunch of conversations, healthy conversations over here on Twitter. And I told him I was going to talk about this today. But the Illa came in and he chimed in on the statement. And I love what the Illa said. He said this happened because their favorite content creators fed them a bunch of garbage for their own benefit. And that's why I get pissed off at how my channel is viewed. He's talking about his own personal channel. He said subscription total, etc. I just don't do that shit. And I know you don't do it either, Authentic. That's why I respect you as a content creator. It's a big reason why I respect the Illa as a content creator as well, because when you go to the Illa's channel, he's not afraid to touch on topics. He's not afraid to talk about things that maybe other people are not discussing within the New York Giants community. And I think more importantly, the Illa has a bottom line philosophy that we operate on over here on Authentic and the Beard in a similar fashion, is that we are not going to do things for clicks. We're not going to do things because the people like it. If I got to come up here and everybody in the chat disagrees with me, I'm okay with that. And I actually encourage that. I like bringing up topics on this channel that split and divide the room because those create the best discussions, not just in football, but in many walks of life. So for me, I respect it the same exact way. And I encourage all of y'all. I don't know if Deilla's in the chat. I've been wrapping y'all up for a pretty long time here. I haven't peeked over at the chat, but go subscribe to Deilla and just check out his videos. He's not going to wow you with fancy production or graphics or sound effects or any of that stuff. He's just going to give you raw ball talk from a true New York Giants fan perspective. Check him out. I always encourage you guys to go check him out because his channel is one that Deilla is taking time out of his work day, literally in between a job, putting up a piece of content. He don't have that luxury to just be sitting around cooking up content all day long. So I respect it even that much more. And some of these points that Deilla has been the first person I saw talking about some of this shit. Like when we hired Joe Shane as the general manager, and he was not really on my radar. The first video I saw was from Deilla saying, pump the brakes, y'all. This might not be the best hire like how y'all thinking this is the best hire. It's a 2-part video. I encourage y'all to go check out both of those parts and just look at how much of the comments that he made in that video that actually came to fruition and came to light. So big respect to Deilla. I love seeing a full circle moment like this where we talk about something literally months ago and most people are not agreeing with it in real time when we're talking about it, but then it takes a little bit more evidence. And shout out to Frank who proposed the first question about Abdul Carter here. And he said something about how this has been one of his concerns since the day we drafted him number 3 overall. Now, for me, this does not change my perspective on who the New York Giants should have drafted 3rd overall. I do think that Abdul Carter was the best player on the board that the New York Giants could have drafted, and I think they made the right decision in drafting him and then trading back up into the first round to go out there and get their franchise quarterback. But just some things I wanted to share with you guys today, and we're going to trickle this off into the running game as well because y'all know the New York Giants have struggled when it comes to stopping the run. I want to say all season, but it's been basically in some of all of our adult lives that the New York Giants can't stop the run. It's just been a major issue. But let's tap in with the chat real quick. I see we got a super chat from the homie Joseph Winograd one time in the building. Appreciate you, my G, coming in with the $10 super chat. Joseph said, I'm looking forward to seeing what Kafka can offer. I don't think we can fairly evaluate him up to this point because of Dable. He comes from the Andy Reid coaching tree, and we have half a season to see. That's very true, and I think that is very fair. To give Mike Kafka a true evaluation, you really can't do it after one game. We got to take, maybe even 7 games is not enough, to be honest, but we got to take these 7 games that we're going to get from Mike Kafka, pile them all up, and one by one, add them up and see where the evaluation lands. I don't think by any means that Mike Kafka is doing a poor job. It's just that you didn't notice like a stark difference in the results, and results is where the fans are that's where they're going to hold a grudge, to be honest, is they want the results. And I understand that too. As a fan myself, I want the results from the New York Giants, and they're just not getting it. And that's unfortunate. And you would hope that with the coaching change that could happen. But the odds are stacked against Mike Kafka. Being an interim head coach and not having success doesn't necessarily have a lot to do with you being a good coach or not. We saw Steve Spagnuolo come in as the New York Giants interim head coach in the late, what was that? That was when McAdoo was fired. So we're talking like 2017. We saw him come in as the interim head coach and not have a lot of success either. It's hard to change an infrastructure that has been built through the offseason and sometimes years influencing that infrastructure. And to just come in as an interim head coach and change that is virtually impossible. But I'm rooting for Kafka. I just don't think he's going to be the man that will ultimately get the job. And personally, if it was up to me, I would move on from Mike Kafka. And I think they have a better scope of what Mike Kafka's capabilities are, being that they are in the building with him day in and day out. And now we're talking about 4 seasons that Mike Kafka has been here. So it's definitely going to be it's a shitty position to be in for Mike Kafka. That's really how I can just summarize that. But big shout out to Joseph Winograd helping us raise the bar over here on Authentic in the Beard. Yeah, Nova Nebula let me know it was 2017. I had to kind of go through the math there in my head and whatnot. Genesis is saying go get all new coaches. I'm kind of with you on that. Big Dog Status said some content creators had the fan base thinking he would be Parsons 2.0. And I'm not mad at that part of it, Big Dog. Like, having expectations for a guy like Abdul Carter, the way that he came out of Penn State, the story is not written yet, but we're about a little bit over halfway through the first chapter of the story here, and it's not looking like a fairy tale ending currently, but we got a lot of football to see from Abdul Carter. So I would just say pump the brakes, allow him to get settled in, just like I started off that segment saying that, who he is today as a rookie is not necessarily who he's going to be. You just got to hope that when we bring in the next coaching staff, these guys can find a way to develop these players and just get them in the right direction to be the best player that they can possibly be. Otherwise, I think that we're going to just continuously fall into a line of, wasting talent and not maximizing the potential from the talent that we are drafting. And those two hands kind of work together, man. One hand washes the other. The general manager brings in the talent, but also the coaching staff has to find a way to get the best out of that talent. And I think that with Abdul Carter, that verdict is not quite there yet. So we got to give him his time, just like we have with a lot of these other players. I think that Tyrone Tracy is a good example of it, kind of on the flip side, right? Like started off incredible as a rookie, and now that we have a second year's worth of football with Tyrone Tracy, I think we truly understand who he is. It's not to say that the evaluation is like completely case closed and shut, but I think we understand the type of player Tyrone Tracy is going to be now with one solid rookie season and then a big lull of low productivity, and then the last 2 weeks coming out here and shining within the New York Giants offense. So I understand the concern, though, big dog status. I definitely get it. Greg says Carter is an off-ball linebacker that you can use to help pressure the quarterback, but no, he is not a defensive end. And I like that statement right there. Mateo says, yo, Illa, I subscribe, brother. That's what's up. So I guess Illa is in the chat here. I guess he is in the chat. I hope he's in the chat. I really wanted him to hear that because I wanted to give him his flowers, man, because he's been putting his foot in this content for a long time here, Shout out Quota. He says, if you remember those Super Bowl teams with our pass rushers, were also really bad with the run as a whole. That's so true. 2011 in particular, against the run struggled, and those teams just got hot, man. And thank the football gods for it that we have 2 Super Bowls in the trophy case, because if we didn't get those Super Bowls, could you imagine being a Giants fan right now without those 2 Super Bowls? For all my OGs out there that are like 35, 40 plus, man, this would be a tough team to root for without those 2 Super Bowls. So, thank God we got those, man. Shout out to Quota one time, too. I see Deaton says Bowen's got to go. The defense is horrendous. Yeah, like I said, I thought he was going to get fired today, to be honest. I really did. No Met says, we saw issues with the pass rush during the preseason. You knew, Authentic. And, I always try to come up here, and I encourage all my homies to do this as well. Like, I just don't like it when people speak definitively on something that is hypothetical. And in the offseason, I didn't come up here and tell you, hey, Abdul Carter is going to be a liability against the run. He's going to be terrible. I didn't say that, but we speculated that, right? And we talked about how this team is being built, and there's really no girth on the outside when you look at the defensive ends. You don't have a traditional build at the defensive end position. So how did we think that this was going to correct some of the deficiencies with stopping the run, right? Chauncey Goldston was supposed to come in and be a guy that could add to that and bring some weight to this defensive line, but unfortunately, he's been injured for a large portion of the season. So it's been tough. No Mets, no Nets, no Jets has been here for, I think I can confidently say this, for every stream for 2 years now. So him saying that's gospel right there, straight up and down. I see we got a couple of more super chats, and I do want to tap in with the chat as well. So if you have any more statements that I might have missed early on and whatnot, feel free to double down and throw them in the chat. We're going to tap in with the chat for like a good 10 minutes here and then continue to talk about the Giants rush defense. Let's see here. Shout out to Illusions one time in the building. This is a new name. It's a new name here. Welcome to the family. If you are new to the show and whatnot, if you've been lurking in the background, big salute to you, man. We appreciate you coming in with that $5 super chat one time, helping us raise the bar over here. Illusion says, I know it's not sexy, but I like Mike McCarthy. I feel like he can get in here and win. And I feel like he's pretty good against division opponents. Absolutely. And we've talked about Mike McCarthy a lot on this channel because dating back to when we first hired Joe Judge, Mike McCarthy was my top candidate. And back then, I was a content creator that was not like, I'm not digging into like who's the defensive coordinator for the Green Bay Packers currently. I would not have been doing that back then. So you had to be a bit of a household name for me to, for you to be on my radar. And I wanted to hire Mike McCarthy in 2020. And I can remember a lot of conversations with a lot of homies back then, Entertainer, Bad Dog, a few other people I used to chop it up with at the time, like, no, you do not want Mike McCarthy. And, ultimately we ended up hiring Joe Judge. And I think that those guys were not as happy about that either, because Joe Judge was a fucking special teams coach from New England. And then we watched Mike McCarthy go to the Dallas Cowboys. He won 12 games in 3 straight seasons over there, but the biggest problem was getting over the hump in the playoffs. I think they only had one playoff win during his entire tenure there with the Dallas Cowboys, which seemed like about 6 years maybe. Well, let me see. So it was 2020, and then this their first year without him. So he was there for 4 or 5 seasons max now. But now at this particular moment, I got to go back in. I got to look at the Cowboys, during the last stretch of Mike McCarthy's tenure there, which they had some pretty good ball. I mean, they won 7 games, I believe it was, that last season with Mike McCarthy without Dak Prescott. I like Mike McCarthy. He checks a lot of the boxes for me as far as being experienced, a track record of winning, the offensive mind, coming from a tree of coaches that we all know how to move the ball down the field as far as offense goes and stretching the field with the pass attack, coming from Green Bay. So if we hired Mike McCarthy, I'll phrase it like this. If we hired Mike McCarthy, I would not be mad. That's what I'll say. But I do got to do my due diligence, look at some of the more young up-and-coming coaches as well that do have a little bit of experience as well, see if I want to bring in a defensive-minded head coach or not. And once we get to the offseason or, towards the end of the offseason, that's when I'm going to do that deep dive. When I'm doing a lot of my prospect stuff for the upcoming draft, I'm going to compile that with a lot of the search for the next head coach and the next coaching staff and whatnot. And, no guarantees what's going to happen down the stretch on this channel, but I know that I'm going to need more time to dive into a lot of this tape and to look, to do the research for a lot of these coaches. So as we get to like the playoffs, I'm not sure if we're going to cover the playoffs this year. That might be something where we take a step back. The Beard had the baby this year and whatnot. We've already taken one step back. But I want the draft coverage this year on our YouTube channel to be hitting a certain way. Because for those of y'all that chimed in with us in the offseason on Bleacher Report, our draft coverage over on Bleacher Report was fucking amazing. And I'm not like patting myself on the back too crazy or nothing like that. But we put our foot in that content 3 days a week. We were putting our foot in that content and just going over so many different prospects, Savion Williams being one of them who made the big play against us yesterday coming out of TCU and whatnot, and just countless prospects we went over that we didn't really get a chance to bring over here to the YouTube side of things. So we're absolutely going to do that this year. But I like where you're, the direction you're headed here with Mike McCarthy. I think, Mike McCarthy, like I said, checks a lot of boxes. But big shout out to Illusions, man. We appreciate you helping us raise the bar over here. And big shout out my dog B-Rog in the building one time, man. What's going on, fam? Coming in with the $5 super chat. Excuse me. B-Rog said, with the regression of Deonte Banks, I think all bets are off with this coaching staff. Let's wait and see. Yeah, I agree. And I think that the regression of Deonte Banks is just one small part of it, right? I saw Emmanuel Forbes make a really good play in yesterday's Rams game on the sideline on a ball that it was to Rashid Shaheed. And a lot of people were saying it was a little bit underthrown, but, man, it was just better defense in my opinion. But, it makes me think about in Deonte Banks' rookie season, I question if his level of play was as high as everybody was touting it to be. Because when I looked at the PFF grades, him and Emmanuel Forbes both were in the 160s range as far as overall grade for defensive backs during that 2023 season, I believe that was. And I had my questions about that going into the season. And then from that point on, lost Wink Martindale and Deonte Banks. It definitely got worse. Good attempt on the Christian Watson touchdown yesterday. I thought he did a decent job. It was a better catch and throw than it was bad defense. I think Deonte Banks is a player that, and it's unfortunate, man. Like, these guys come into the league fresh out of college, 21 years old, 22 years old, and they get thrown to the wolves. And sometimes they're not ready for that. And Deonte Banks is a perfect example of that. But he's not a guy that I look at in the same light as a DeAndre Baker or Eli Apple. I don't put Deonte Banks in that same category, and that could be from my Maryland Terps bias. But I still think Deonte Banks is a more capable player. But big shout out to B-Rog, man. Appreciate you helping us raise the bar over here. B-Raw been supporting the shit out of this channel, man. Big salute to you, brother. And let me just kind of get here to the bottom of the chat here and just tap in with we'll tap in with like the last 10 here. See how y'all are feeling about some of this stuff. Noel Void says, was Chris Shula mentioned? I haven't mentioned Chris Shula yet. We heard Jay Glazer talking about him yesterday right before the broadcast. I got to do my due diligence on Chris Shula. I don't know why Chris Shula is becoming this hot topic, this hot name, but I do think that McVay has vouched for him, so maybe that has a lot to do with it as well. Nick P29 said Mike McCarthy doesn't win big games. You're not going to get pushback from me. I would say consistently that is a fact there, but he has won the big game at least once, so you got to give him his props there. But considering that he had Aaron Rodgers on that roster for as long as he did, you would think that Mike McCarthy would have more big wins in the playoffs, and that's unfortunate for him. Let me see. Kill Cam says Mike McCarthy is a good comp to Tom Thibodeau, what he was for the Knicks. I don't watch a lot of basketball these days, but I do know that Thibodeau was fired recently, so maybe that's not a good I won't say not a good comparison, because maybe it is a good comparison, but maybe that's not a good candidate to bring in if that is the accurate comparison. Let me see. This one is from Clout House Entertainment. He says Giants need to focus on just winning games. Yeah, and that's easier said than done, Clout House, because winning games, there are a lot of things that compile to make that happen. First, it's got to be a coach that has that mentality, that when games are tight, down the crunch, down the clutch time and whatnot, to be able to find ways to get your team over the hump. We've seen that from Matt LaFleur from the Green Bay Packers for the past 3 years at least. But with the New York Giants, we haven't had that consistency. Let's see what else we got here. Greg says, the last 4 head coaches have been offensive guys, and the reason we haven't won shit. Yeah, that's that, along with their guys that are not experienced. You look at Ben McAdoo, Pat Shurmur, Joe Judge, and Brian Dable. Those were all guys that were basically getting their first opportunity as a head coach. I think Pat Shurmur might have had one other opportunity, maybe in Cleveland. But I know he was an OC with the Vikings for a while. And, there's the common theme right there, which is offensive-minded, inexperienced coaches, and we got to get away from that. I'm not necessarily going to be trying to avoid offensive-minded coaches, but I don't want another head coach that checks both of those boxes, being inexperienced and being offensive-minded. Quota says, we don't even win the small games, laughing my ass off. It's facts, man. It's facts. It's definitely facts. Genesis says, yeah, I think Chris Shula is who I'm thinking of. Yeah, a lot of people have been talking about Shula. I want to say Shula's the offensive coordinator over there with the Rams. I could be wrong on that. And a lot of people are talking about the Colts defensive coordinator as well. What's my dude's name? I can't remember his name. His last name starts with an A. Anarumo? I can't remember his last name right now. Simeon says we aren't even a 500 team. Yeah. It's crazy. We're a 2-win team right now. It's terrible. It's really terrible. Shout out my dog, Jaji05 in the building. Jaji said, I don't care if the coach is offensive-minded or defensive-minded. I need a coach that's a master manager and leader of men, leading all the other coaches as well as the players. That's another good point, man. We got a lot of characteristics that when we go on this head coach hunt, that, the next head coach has to check these boxes. Greg the Turd Hauler says, Giants lore was built on Hall of Fame defenders and coordinators. We are a defensive franchise. We are anti-finesse football. I love the way you worded that, bro. Anti-finesse. He also continued and said the Giants have always been the franchise to destroy the latest and greatest new offensive gimmick. That's bars for my dog right there, man. Yeah, Greg, you definitely hauling them turds right now, because that's that shit right there. That's definitely that shit right there. Ben Ayers said Forbes has been solid. Yeah, he's been playing some better ball. Haven't had a chance to look at their games a lot, but I did see that one play on Red Zone. I was like, Emmanuel Forbes. That's a good look right there. Francis Moran says your analysis is your differentiator and competitive advantage. I like that. I don't know if he's talking about in the football world or if he's talking about us over here on Authentic and the Beard. Either way, checks that box, man. Big shout out my dog Francis in the building one time. No Met said that Banks was the same draft as Forbes. Yep. Mm-hmm. Both first-round picks, too. That's why, the comparison was there. Me and the Beard were always comparing those two. And when I saw Emmanuel Forbes in person at training camp that rookie season, I literally took to my social media and I said, yo, this dude is the real deal. Come to find out that when it got to the regular season, that dude was a straight-up real liability for the Washington Commanders. But there are so many things that factor into good cornerback play. Scheme is one of the most important things. We've seen that with players like, what was my dog from the Raiders back in the day? damn, what was that dude's name? Nasi Amdamwa? What was his name? I might have like did some dyslexic shit right there, but I know y'all remember that DB. He was the best DB in the league back then. They traded him from the Raiders to the Philadelphia Eagles, and he just completely became a liability. Richard Sherman is another guy that comes to mind, too, that excels in that zone defense, and you put him out there man-to-man, and the results are a lot different. Noah Voigt said, my issue with Banks is his effort. His bad tackling angles can be corrected with a good coach. It's a mixed bag, Noah. I'll say, because at times, like when I think about when Brian Robinson ran over Deonte Banks, I didn't think that was a lack of effort. I thought that was just a lack of skill and a lack of just weight, just getting bullied out there. But I like Banks. And Ben Ayers says that Banks is better than Forbes. And I do agree with that. And it's just right. You need the right surroundings. You need the right environment. And right now, Deonte Banks doesn't have that. No Met says that Forbes has been solid. Washington fans know that. They probably don't. And I haven't seen enough to vouch that he's been solid. But I did see that play that he made, and I was like, God damn, Forbes out there, I'm talking like straight up the way you design a DB to get a PBU. It was a great play, and it was late in the game, too. I mean, they make that catch there, they're going to probably go on to win that game. Greg says the Giants neutralized Bill Walsh's West Coast offense that every offense is built on the foundation of today. We were the franchise that destroyed that. I love what Greg is saying in the chat right now, y'all. Y'all need to give Greg some flowers in the chat right now. Send this man some biceps or something because Greg is dropping bars right now in the chat, man. Big shout out to Greg. He says the Giants neutralized Montana and Brady. We are the GOAT quarterback nemesis. I'm loving all of that right there. And we got to get back to those ways. Deaton Shelton says, I think Hyatt should be cut after that lazy Rowdy ran yesterday. What a waste. I can't look at one play to cut a player, but if you think that the accumulation of all the plays that Jalen Hyatt has left out there on the field are a reason for him to be cut, I wouldn't give you pushback on that either. Greg Terhaller said, F. Shula, we already had Mike, and he was asked. We did have Mike Shula as our offensive coordinator for a while. That is very true. Greg said, I'm a Bama fan as well, so hell no to any Shula. I love it. Nova Nebula says, Banks definitely has all of the athleticism, and he can play at the NFL speed. I do agree with you on that as well. Noel says, had zero interest in tackling yesterday and also the touchdown run from Wilson. Banks wanted no part in tackling. That is the weaker part of Deonte Banks' game, and tackling is just something that, you really can't teach somebody to be an aggressive tackler on the NFL level. That's something that happens that is instilled in your makeup as, you're coming up in football, not when you get to the highest level. But there are corners that can excel in the NFL that don't necessarily, have tackling as their front-running skill set. Word says that's what Entertainer said. Yeah, he was talking about that. Y'all know me. I ain't up here capping. That ain't my thing. And shout out to the Entertainer too, man. Simeon says Tibbs made them respectable again. Okay, I got you on that. That's what's up. So when we're talking about the comparisons to Mike McCarthy, we're talking about possibly Mike McCarthy being a head coach that could come in and make the New York Giants at least a respectable organization again. And I don't disagree with that at all. I like that. Cloudhouse says it was in response to the Mike McCarthy in big games. At this point, winning regular games is the goal. That's true. Very true. Very true. No Met says, I think Mike's age is a factor also. If Mike was 15 years younger, he'd probably be a head coach somewhere not available for the Giants to interview. That's true. I think I remember seeing something about Mike McCarthy, though, wanting to take a little bit of a break from football before he got back into coaching. I hope that's the case. And if the Giants want to pull the trigger and bring in Mike McCarthy, it's not going to bother me. Let's see what else we got. I'm just trying to catch up with you guys. Chat is booming today. Big shout out to all of y'all, man, pulling up, rocking out with us today, especially after a fifth straight loss for the New York Giants. I'm surprised you guys are still here. I really am. I love y'all sending shout outs to Greg, man. Big salute to Greg. Greg's cooking. Clout says that Hyatt needs a change of scenery. I do agree on that, but that might not save him either because just looking at the All-22 again, Jalen Hyatt runs routes like he's expecting contact while he's running the route. There are some of the best route runners the game has ever seen. They will run right fucking through you. And Jalen Hyatt, even on like mesh concepts where you're looking for a little bit of contact, you want to get that rub and get that bump, and he'll still avoid the contact. He'll try to like fake in front of the defender and make it seem like he's trying to, initiate the contact, and he doesn't do it. So there are a lot of things in Jalen Hyatt's game that he just needs to iron out, man. He's just currently, and I had a lot of high hopes for Jalen Hyatt, but currently he's just not a good football player. Timmy Foosball says, late to the show, here's some thoughts. Banks and Hyatt got to go. Carter at the moment is a bust. O-line playing really well. Bowen is unfireable for some reason. Hard Knocks is going to be hilarious. Fuck this team. Let's address them all here, okay? So Banks and Hyatt got to go eventually. At end of the season, sure. Carter at the moment is a bust. I can't label a guy a bust 11 games into the season. He's generating pressures at a high rate. He's just not getting after the quarterback. And y'all know me. I don't necessarily like to point the finger at coaches. Like, I try to look for reasons why we can support the coaches. But if you look at how Shane Bowen has been utilizing Abdul Carter, I mean, he's not being put in the best position to succeed. O-line playing really well? Absolutely are. They're playing great. I told a ton of people that once you brought a decisive quarterback into the equation with the New York Giants, it was going to change things. And that makes me want to bring up another point. This might be an egregious comparison, but when I watched Shedeur Sanders yesterday, and I put the compilation of all of his throws on the channel if y'all want to check it out, because, you know, I like seeing quarterbacks in their debut. I've done that over the years with guys like Anthony Richardson. I did it with Jackson Dart, Cam Ward. I've done it with so many players. In the preseason, we were doing it with J.J. McCarthy, Michael Penix. We've done all 22 breakdowns on all these quarterbacks. I'm infatuated with the quarterback position. But when I watched Shedeur Sanders yesterday and his inability to step up in the pocket, it reminded me a lot of Daniel Jones, that if you could possibly, because arm talent is not necessarily his weakness. Like, it's not his greatest strength or anything like that, but he does not have like a weak arm. If he has time, he can make the throw. When you look at Daniel Jones, that was his problem with New York. He was not decisive. And when the pressure started to get close and when he started to take, too many sacks, it almost ruined his psyche over here with the New York Giants. And then you put him behind the Colts offensive line where he has a lot of time to be able to operate. And he almost looks like a bit of a different quarterback. And I'm emphasizing a bit of a different quarterback because he's still the same quarterback. I told my homies this the other day. Like, if you get pressure on Daniel Jones, that is how you make him fold. And the same thing goes for Shedeur Sanders. If you get pressure on him, he's going to retreat backwards. But our offensive line, I say all that to say that the reason why our offensive line looks much better is because you got these quarterbacks that are willing to step up in the pocket. In Jameis Winston, who is playing decisive. And then when you look at Jackson Dart, he just sees the pressure much better than maybe 75% of the starting quarterbacks in the NFL right now. So O-line playing well is something that we all envisioned, as long as we could get a decisive quarterback here under center, and that's exactly what we got. So love your statement about the offensive line, 100% agree. The Bowen being unfireable for some reason is facts too, and I don't know what that is, bro. Like, I guess because they fired Brian Dable already, they don't want to just, go down the line and just keep firing people. But, like, we're talking 5 straight weeks here, man. It's the same fucking results. Like, Shane Bowen absolutely has to go. If anybody deserved to go, it should have been Shane Bowen before Brian Dable, in my opinion. Hard Knocks is going to be absolutely hilarious. I'm wondering if Jackson Dart's going to be healthy by the time we get back there, and if they're going to slow play him getting back into the lineup and utilize Jameis Winston, or if they're going to rush to get Jackson Dart back in the lineup. But we shall see. The last one, F this team. I feel you, but I'm not quite there yet. As I opened up this stream today, Timmy, I said, you can't always look at the grass on the other side and deem that it is going to be greener. Sometimes you got to appreciate that grass that you're standing on in your own garden. And I say all that to say that thank God we aren't Cleveland Browns fans, because what they're dealing with over there is a complete delusional shit show, and I don't wish that upon any fan base. I feel bad for the fan base. I feel bad for Shedeur Sanders. I feel bad for Dylan Gabriel. And I feel bad for Kevin Stefanski, because I think that minus the fan base, all 3 of the player and coach that I named there, they're all capable players, but they're just in a shit show of a situation that will not allow them to thrive. So, I'm okay today being a New York Giants fan. That's for sure. I'm grateful today. I'm showing all gratitude, Timmy. But shout out to Timmy pulling up, rocking out with us a little bit late here. Let me see. This is OPBO2 Gamer says best content on his platform. Bro, that shit means a lot right there. That means a lot, man. I'm just up here just trying to be me, trying to give you guys as much data as I possibly can. That's one thing that we thrive ourselves on over here on Authentic and the Beard, is that you're not going to get this kind of data basically anywhere else. And we're hour and 15 minutes in, and I still got a ton more to go over. We're definitely going to get back to talking about the run here, but I just wanted to tap in with the chat. Soul Brother 1 says, do you do a audio podcast version also? So a lot of people have been asking us to do that. And, I've been thinking about it like, can we just take this format that we do up here and just straight translate it to iTunes, Spotify? The other thing is, I do think we could do that, no problem. But my background comes from music. And, I get a lot of people on my Twitter, not a lot, I'll say a little bit of people on my Twitter that at times will try to troll me over some of the albums that I've put out or some of the music I put out. Like, hey, you only have this many Spotify monthly listeners. That's because I don't give a fuck about no Spotify, no Apple, because they do not pay their creators. Most importantly, they do not pay their musicians what they are truly worth. So I've almost boycotted placing music on these streaming platforms. I do have 2 albums on the streaming platforms, but I've contemplated taking them down as soon as I get this next run of music that's going to come out. So there's been that kind of a, just split on that a little bit, because Spotify, in my opinion, has ruined music. It's why we don't have the necessary funnel to find great music anymore, because there's a lot of great music out there, but Spotify basically took over what the radios were doing, and now everybody can just pay $10, whatever it is a month, to listen to unlimited music. And it makes us as listeners, our attention span is just that much smaller. And it's something that I don't support, but you aren't the first person to ask that. So I do feel like I have a requirement to start doing that. So I'll say by next season, we'll definitely get the audio side of things popping. Will it be on Apple Music and Spotify? I'm not 100% sure, but I know a lot of people like to listen to some of this stuff while they're in the car. And if you don't have the YouTube Premium account, you can't even have it open in the background. Well, actually, now you can. You can keep a podcast open in the background, but you just can't shut the phone off, which that gets really annoying. Let's see what else we got. We'll take a couple more, and then we'll go off into talking about the rush defense, because I do want to get to that as well. Nova says that Hyatt just has no refinement on the nuances required to play the position at a professional level. That's worded really well, bro. Really well. Love that right there. No Met says that Hyatt doesn't even look like a speed guy. Yeah, at times it does look like that. Shout out my dog Chris Peace in the building one time. He said Hyatt runs routes like he expects to be not in the progression. It's very true. That was one of the notes that we put when we broke down his all-22. Every one of his routes from 2024, that's still on the channel. Most of the times he is a clear out route, and he is not expecting to get the ball. And I think that might have had something to do with the late interception from Jameis Winston as well. Quota says, if you watch any Abdul Carter tape and say he's a bust, then you're fucking insane. I'm sorry. Timmy Foosball ain't probably digging into like no all-22 on the collegiate level. So give him a little bit of the benefit of the doubt on that. But yeah, like, I mean, you're probably talking about on the NFL level there. So I hear you, bro. Trust and believe. I hear and I feel those words to the T there. Nova says Carter is not a bust, just has had some disappointing results. He's going to be a productive player in the league. Yeah, it reminds me a little bit of how people were treating Kayvon Thibodeau early on as well. Deaton says Hyatt has zero football IQ. He's lost. He does look a little bit lost out there. Got to agree with you on that. Josh says folks thought Peyton was only successful because of Hall of Fame Breeze, but this man rose Kerry Collins' career from the dead to a Super Bowl appearance. That's another great statement right there. Simeon says, I want Hyatt to play like a diva, expecting the ball to be thrown at him on every play so he runs through every route. And honestly, look, like that would be not that in particular, but it would be a decent excuse for Jalen Hyatt not going 100 on routes where he's knowing he's not getting the ball, if we were talking like JV football or something, right? But on the NFL level, bro, they're paying you to be out there. Even low-level players like Jalen Hyatt, they're paying you. You should be giving maximum effort. Players need to treat this shit like a workout, bro. Like, go out there and try to get the workout at the highest level you could possibly get it at. And if you don't get the results, you can at least live with that you went out there and you gave maximum effort. So it's a great point here by Simeon. Darrell says Bowen hasn't truly put this defense at their full potential as a whole. He plays too conservative. I think you worded that really well, because he hasn't really given them the full potential. There are times during the season that he has put them in a position to be able to go out there and win games. As of late, that has not been the case. So I agree with you on that. It has not been a consistent level of putting our players in the best position. Muhammad Ali says, authentic, would you be in favor of firing everyone but keeping Carmen Brasillo? Sure. I think Carmen Brasillo has done a pretty good job with the line, but again, I do think that the decisive quarterback is the biggest change, even dating all the way back to when we had Bobby Johnson here as the offensive line coach as well. You still see the players. You could maybe say Joshua Ezeudu has seen a little bit of development since Brasillo got here. But, like, for the most part, most of these players are still the same. JMS, got a little bit better there before the injury and whatnot. But being opposed to it, no, I would not be opposed to it. Nova said Shador will never begin to even play at a competent level until he learns to stop running backwards. Yeah, that's a fact. That's the biggest deficiency in that kid's game. And I see a lot of people have been blaming it on, like, not getting reps with the ones, and had a good conversation with my boy Sebastian about that as well. And backup quarterbacks don't get reps with the ones. That's not a normal thing. Like, Russell Wilson's not going to get reps with the ones this week leading up to week 12. It's just not going to happen. When Malik Willis came into this game on Sunday against the New York Giants for the Green Bay Packers, I doubt he got any reps with the first team. He just went out there and played ball. And if you're running backwards like that, you're just trying to play hero ball, you're never going to see a lot of success in the NFL doing that. Last one I'll take here, and then we'll dive into some of these run numbers. Shout out to Illa, man. Good to see you in the building, dog. I hope you were here for the previous breakdown. It seemed like you were. The Illa said Jonathan Taylor has taken a ton of pressure off of Daniel Jones. He's having a great season. Yeah. That's what Jones needs. When we saw Jones have success, he had a running game behind him. He also added to that running game as well. I mean, you can't ignore the fact that Daniel Jones can do things with his legs and create. And that also helps out the running back to an extent as well. I mean, I think the running back probably helps him out more, but it's definitely a situation where one hand washes the other. And, having to pay attention to those quarterbacks running those read options, those boots, and holding on to the ball. In return, that'll make your running back that much better. I mean, Jonathan Taylor is a great running back. He's having a great year. He showed at one point in his career before Daniel Jones got there that he was the number one running back in the league. And now that you put Daniel Jones in the equation, he's showing you that he's back at that status again. So competency at the quarterback position. The one thing I would keep my eye out on is that, you look at the Carson Wentz season with the Indianapolis Colts and use that as a bit of a measuring stick to understand where Daniel Jones is at the end of the season as well. Major luxury of playing an easier schedule the first 7-8 games and whatnot. Still some impressive victories on their resume this year. But Carson Wentz ended the year, don't quote me, but I do think the numbers are right. I think it was 27 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. It got down to the last game of the year. I believe it was against the Jacksonville Jaguars where they ended up losing and missing out on the playoffs. But the Colts, they're likely not going to miss out on the playoffs this year, but probably going to win that division and then probably going to have to go up against a juggernaut whenever they play their first playoff game, because it's looking like some of these teams like the Chiefs maybe, trying to think what other teams are second in their division. There are a couple of teams out there in the AFC that are going to be probably a wild card that are going to, present some issues for some of those teams with the home field advantage. But best of luck to DJ, man. He's playing some pretty good ball. The last 2 games haven't been all that great, but throughout the season he's been playing some really good ball. You got to give him his props on that. All right, let me catch up here. Yeah, and I saw Genesis said facts, Francis, and he's talking about the scout from the Dallas Cowboys that, yeah, Scout was right. Scout was definitely right. All right, let's talk about some of these run numbers real quick because, just to kind of, I guess, update where we are currently with the New York Giants rush defense, which we know it's bad. They still can't stop the run. It's been terrible. Currently now, after the Week 11 matchup against the Packers, the Giants are allowing 149.9 rushing yards per game. They jumped up from 31st to 30th, so I guess that's a step in the right direction. They're allowing 5.5 yards per carry, which is dead last in the NFL. They've also allowed the most explosive runs of any team on the season at 48. They did hold the Packers to 128 rushing yards on Sunday, but a lot of that is smoke. It's not – you look at the first half. First quarter, Packers had 84 rushing yards in the first quarter. Josh Jacobs ends up going out of the game with a knee injury. When he left the game, he had 7 attempts for 50 yards, averaging 5.7 yards per carry before the injury. The Packers averaged 6.6 yards per carry in the first half, and Green Bay rushed for 100 yards in the first 2 quarters. So the injury to their best player, who just so happened to be their running back, is a big reason why the New York Giants had success stopping the run in the second half. I forget the homie's name that was the running back that came in, but he had no success. And they were also trying to run it a little bit more between the tackles. The other thing to keep in mind here is that last week, a lot of our fan base was complaining about not having the personnel to run man-to-man and Shane Bowen's defense, basically getting gashed in man-to-man, and how foolish of a defensive coordinator Shane Bowen is for leaving his backup cornerbacks and safeties in man-to-man coverage. Giants came into Week 11 with the third highest man coverage rate. You look at Jordan Love versus man in this game, he was 8 for 12 for 122 yards. I'm sorry, versus zone in this game. So Shane Bowen tried to switch it up and go with the zone a little bit. And Jordan Love saw a ton of success. But Christian Watson, both of his touchdowns that were in the red zone, at least the green zone, they both came against man coverage. One of them was on Deonte Banks, the first one. The second one was on Javon Holland. But when you look at how the New York Giants need to progress into the 2026 NFL draft, they desperately need to address positions that they have already invested in. Defensive back being one of them. You've already spent $100 million on Paulson Adebo and Javon Holland, and that's still looking like one of your weaker units. I understand they've been dealing with injuries. The pass rush is not getting after the quarterback the way that we thought they were, and I think that that's a big part, why our secondary is not performing to the ability that we thought. But wide receiver core is the same way. I mean, you look at the Giants, right? They've invested in Wan'Dale Robinson, Jalen Hyatt, Malik Neighbors, and yet and still they still need a bona fide wide receiver 2. In my preference, a wide receiver 1B to Malik Neighbors. And then you look at defensive backs, the amount of draft capital and the amount of free agent spending that has gone into bringing in defensive backs, and to still not have that unit ironed out, it's definitely not encouraging for our fan base. So, I hope that Joe Schoen, if he is still here by the time we get to the 2026 NFL draft, understands to put some of the mistakes in the past. Just because you spent a third-round pick, traded up to get there for a Jalen Hyatt, does not mean that you cannot address wide receiver again. Just because you spent $100 million on Javon Holland and Paulson Adebo does not mean that you cannot address either the safety position or the cornerback position. At this point in time, Tyler Nubin doesn't look like he's going to be a cornerstone piece for the New York Giants. Seems like we might have been better off just keeping Jason Pinnock on the roster. But bottom line with all of this, with the defense and the offense, can't stop the run, don't expect to win games. Don't have enough weapons on offense, where's the offensive output going to come from? Our personnel, in my opinion, and I think that we've done a good job today in breaking down that this personnel needs more balance. We have too many players that are alike, and we need to be able to have balance from the personnel perspective when you're talking about build, archetype, play style. All of these things are important, both sides of the ball, not just up front with the defensive line, but also when you have a wide receiver on your roster like a Darius Slayton, there's no reason to have a wide receiver on your roster like a Jalen Hyatt. And I just think the Giants are approaching depth and they're approaching the personnel balance in the wrong way. It's something that you just hope that Joe Schoen can find a way to just learn from those mistakes. That was the theme coming into the season, and we're kind of right back to where we started, which is just, yeah, man, it's a major letdown. I wanted this team to come out and surprise me this year, and they failed to do that. And giving them a lane for it, too. Like the defensive line, I came into the year not really invested in a lot of the narrative and the hype around the defensive line being a top 5 unit and all that stuff. I kept telling you guys, I want to see it. I want to see it. I want the Kool-Aid poured out of the package, stirred in boiling hot water before we place it in the refrigerator, and then pour it over ice so I can have a nice ghetto glass of Kool-Aid. And the New York Giants defense went out there, and they didn't live up to the billing. This defensive front looks just as bad as it did last season. So that's unfortunate. And last but not least, the Giants still need a head coach. And we have to endure the rest of this season now, with that looming, that cloud kind of looming over us of knowing that when we get to the end of the season that we're absolutely going to have to go out there and address, the head coach position again. And, I've been here for 7 years, y'all. And the part that kills me is that we're right back to where we were at in 2019, where you got a young quarterback on the roster and we're about to fire a coach. And now you got to go out there on a coaching hunt and try to bring in the guy who's the right guy. And that hunt is much easier said than done. So honestly, I'm not looking forward to it. I preferred having a coach that was in limbo, to be honest, than going into 2026, just with not many answers there at the head coach position. So we shall see. I see Don Devine says, Authentic, as it stands right now, what position should we draft with those first 2 picks? Wide receiver got to be one of them. I'd be willing to, I got to dig into the prospects first as well. But inside linebacker is as important as any other position. It all depends on what is coming out in this class. That's going to be important. But I like wide receiver for sure in the first 2 picks. I like inside linebacker, and I like cornerback. You can never have too many dogs up front on the offensive line. So if they have a guy they might, best player on the board be an offensive lineman, I would be, willing to support that as well. And Greg says injuries killed us again this season. It did. That's why you got to be prepared for them. You have to be. And the crazy part is that there are plenty of teams that are not prepared for this exact scenario that the New York Giants are going through this year. And the Washington Commanders within the division are another team that I think, they didn't really look at the depth perspective of their roster. They only looked at the boxes checked in the starting lineup. Guys started to go down, started to, get injured, getting put on IR. They lost both of their starting edge rushers in Dorrance Armstrong and Dietrich Wise on the other side. And then they lost Dietrich Wise's backup in Jean-Baptiste. They're down to like their last limb on edge rushers. And they've dealt with injuries in the defensive backs unit as well, with Marshawn Lattimore going down with the season-ending injury. Offensively, they lost, what's McCaffrey's brother's name? I can't remember his first name for some reason. Luke McCaffrey. They lost him to a collarbone injury. Terry McLaurin's been banged up all year long. Austin Eckler been injured. The common theme with a lot of these players is that they are not young puppies. They're veterans. When you don't have players behind them and you're banking on youth to come in, some of these draft picks barely been out there for a year, and you're hoping that those guys can come in and be serviceable, that is a recipe for a disaster. So we learned, again, the hard way. And if Joe Schoen is back next year, which I'm about 50-50 if they're going to do it. I don't know if they're going to do it or not. But if he is back next year, they got to find a way to iron that out and figure that out and bring some more depth pieces into this organization. It's probably the most important thing, and it's been the Achilles heel for the New York Giants over the past couple seasons. Mateo says they ain't give you Kool-Aid, they gave you Crystal Light. I ain't too mad at some Crystal Light, too. Back in the day, I can remember when the Kool-Aid was out. You find an old Crystal Light package, you had to, gas it up with some sugar for sure, but it definitely wasn't too bad. The Illa says, just imagine if we traded back for McMillan and then took a true defensive end like a Reuben Bain Jr. this season. I get his sacks aren't there this season for Miami, but the traits are there to be a force. That's some very forward thinking. Tetairoa McMillan was like my dog. I was trying to maneuver any way possible for the New York Giants to draft Tetairoa McMillan, and I knew it wasn't plausible for us, to be honest, because trading back and then getting a wide receiver, it's just something that I knew that Joe Schoen and this front office were not going to be invested in. I like what they did. I got to admit, I do like what they did with Abdul Carter and with Jackson Dart in the first round. But, man, Tetairoa McMillan, and there were guys, man, like some of these draft dudes, I don't know what the fuck they be on, but like, they'll talk about a player for 2 years, Tetairoa McMillan, next Mike Evans, blah, 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 blah. And then you get 2 months before the draft and they're like, I don't know if his speed's going to translate to the NFL. And he doesn't win on speed. That's not Tetairoa's game. And, man, those people are eating their words right now, man. Tetairoa McMillan is absolutely the best wide receiver in this draft. And, I was talking with some homies about this the other day because one of my homies was telling me, like, yeah, man, and this draft class this year is not a good one. I'm like, how the fuck do you know that? He's like, I'm watching football on Saturdays and shit. Like, I'm like, bro, that's not how you figure out about a draft class. You have to go in and look at the All-22. You have to go in, and if you don't have the All-22, at least be able to, with a clicker, rewind the reps and see the reps. There's no way that you're watching college football on Saturday, let alone watching multiple games at the same time and being able to be like, oh, I see this prospect here, this prospect here. To me, all that shit is a bunch of bullshit that is just narratives that people throw out there, and then people who don't have or who aren't doing the due diligence to do the research just piggyback on somebody else's narrative and they go with that. You're seeing it happen in the Browns fan base right now, to be honest. Nobody wants to go in and look at the true tape. That's why I do the compilations, so that people can see for themselves. But I don't know if this is going to be a weak draft class right now. A lot of people told me that this was the weakest quarterback class that we've seen in the last decade. It's not really looking like that right now, to be honest. It's not. I mean, Jackson Dart looks like a freaking stud. Cam Ward's not putting together the numbers that people want to see just yet. But from a reps perspective, Cam Ward looks like what he looked like in college. So I think if they get the right tools, the right pieces in there, they're going to be just fine at the quarterback position. And then there are a bunch of guys that haven't even gotten their opportunity yet. I think Dylan Gabriel's being, a bit unfairly judged over there. If you notice, in his first game as a starter, okay, he goes out there, he puts up 2 touchdowns, like 197 through the air, no interceptions. Everybody's like, oh, man, this guy's dinking and dunking. He's garbage, blah, 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 blah. And then you see Shedeur Sanders go out there, and the energy's totally different. He goes 4 for 16 for 47 yards, and people are like, oh, this offensive line is garbage. Like, man, I will admit to my biases all day long, but most people don't. And that's a big reason why they get themselves into trouble when it comes to, judging certain players. Like, I think Shedeur has the capability to be a decent quarterback in this league, but right now you're going to sit here and tell me that he gives the Cleveland Browns a better chance at winning games than Dylan Gabriel? I can't sit up here and say that because he hasn't figured out how to not run backwards yet. And that is a characteristic that you can't do in the NFL. We all know that. So when it comes to the draft, though, bro, it's like, I'm going to wait until I look at all the tape, look at all the prospects. Everybody been telling me about this guy, and all I've been doing is putting them in a note or putting them in a thread. And then when it comes time, I'm going to go in there and do the dirty work and put boots on the ground and get it done. So we'll see. We'll see how it all pans out, how this draft class looks when all's said and done. But there were so many late draft risers in the last draft that people were not even talking about. Darius Alexander was one of them. People weren't talking about Darius Alexander until probably 2 to 3 months before the draft, So there's always players like that. And Tedero McMillan is he's evidence that just don't try to over evaluate. Like, look at it when it's there, look what's there, judge it. Don't try to keep looking over and try to convince yourself, oh, this guy's not a good player. They were trying to convince us that Matthew Golden was a better wide receiver than Tedero McMillan to start the year. Like, come on, that shit is crazy. Simeon says, I wanted Carson Schlesinger. That's the linebacker that's with, I want to say the Cleveland Browns drafted him, and he was coming out of UCLA, coming off a big injury. Dude was a fucking dog, man. And the Commanders drafted his buddy. He hasn't played a lot this year either. What's his name? Kane Medrano is the other guy they drafted, and he was more of a speed linebacker. I liked both of them, but Carson, he was definitely the guy who had that dog in his game, and I would have absolutely wanted to draft him. But Joe Shane does not hold linebacker and running back to a high regard, and he thinks you can just plug in random-ass dudes, and that's, it's going to be fine. He's learning the hard way that that's not the case. Nova Nebula says, Nova Nebula says, as ridiculous as it sounds because of all of the investment that has already been made to offensive tackle, but as of right now, I'm improving. The defense is still the highest priority to me. That's facts. And let me see, you're saying that OT means something else or something. Let me see, the investment that has already been made to it, I guess is what he's saying there. He's probably saying to it, yeah. Talking about the investment already made to the defense, but as of right now, improving the defense is still the highest priority to me. I'm not mad at that. You're not getting the results on this defense right now. You got to bring in some different bodies for sure. Fire Medic says, should Jackson Dart have to wear a Guardian cap? Have to wear? No player should have to wear anything. I don't remember any quarterbacks wearing a Guardian cap. That's the other thing too. I don't know about Jackson Dart and these concussions, man, but like we all know in the comparison that somebody made here, I think it was Quota actually. That was the first person that I saw make the comparison, about a boxer's chin. Every boxer does not have the same chin, and it does seem that Jackson Dart is kind of being a little bit more susceptible to the concussions than the norm. And I think in the next, we'll say 2 years, we're going to find out if Jackson Dart has a skull that is surrounding a loose brain, and the brain's just shaking around in there because this is a lot of concussions to be dealing with, or at least a lot of visits to the the blue tent, man. Like, 4 times this year already, that's not a good look. So that's something that we got to monitor moving forward. I know I was on record before saying that the sliding stuff was not going to be an issue. That shit been an issue. It's definitely been an issue. And he's got to find a way to play safer football and keep himself out of harm's way. But as far as the Guardian cap, that's up to Jackson Dart. Shout out Phase 114 in the building, says, good afternoon. It's hard to believe multi-million-dollar organizations can overlook the depth. It's crazy. It's crazy. Every time I read the word depth now, I think about the Beard saying it, because the Beard says depth like really, he like over enunciates. He's like deaf. I'm just like, yo, but that's how the Beard be. Beard, we go into 7-Eleven and all that. You got the Beardisms y'all are all too familiar with. But depth is super important. I don't know why the New York Giants, wanted to neglect it, especially with the results that we've seen over the past with the offensive line when Daniel Jones had the neck injury against the Miami Dolphins early on in the season in 2023 and then ultimately tore his knee. That was proof, all the proof you needed right there, that depth is just as important as the guys you have in the starting lineup. I see Deilla and my dog Dante in the building. What's going on, man? Y'all go represent, go subscribe over there to East Coast Gridiron. They doing some great work over there. And yeah, man, Dante and Deilla are two of the I'll say, how do I want to word this? 2 of my favorite football minds out there, man. They're definitely doing some great work. And let me see. I see Chris Peace talking about a Marjorie bomb over here. Let's see. Marjorie's in the building one time. Big shout out to the queen. Marjorie says, Giants are the only team in the NFL to have scored 30-plus versus the Eagles and Broncos this year. Damn. They're also the only team to score an opening drive and a first-quarter touchdown versus the Packers. Tweet Dan Schneider. Yeah, I knew the one. We talked about the first-quarter touchdown and the opening drive, the first one versus the Packers. But, damn, the only team to have scored 30-plus against the Eagles and the Broncos is crazy. That's crazy. That's crazy. Another bomb from Marjorie. Let's see what else we got. Dante says he was on Darius Alexander from interviewing his teammate from 2 years back. Loved my interview with him. Teddy Buchanan was on my list, and people thought I was crazy. they always going to think you crazy, Dante, until it comes to light, right? Let me think about how Darius Alexander got on. Savion Williams. That's how he got on my radar. I'm like, oh, who the fuck is this dude? Like, wait a minute here. This dude is huge. And I was looking at, damn, I ain't going to remember this dude. He was like an oversized 3-tech defensive tackle playing out of a small school. I can't remember his name. And he's having a little bit of success in the NFL right now, too. He's like, his upper body was like super swole. Super big dude up top, but then his legs, like skinny-ass legs. But he's having a lot of success so far this season. I forget dude's name, man. I forget even what school he was at, too. I'm going to have to definitely go back, dig up his name one time. Francis says that quality depth, not just depth. Giants had Jake and long neck Glennon. Yeah, they had Jake Fromm. Yeah, and that wasn't a good look back then. Those are bad examples of depth, right? You definitely need quality depth, just because you're on a roster. And when we say depth, I think we're always talking about quality depth, because just because you are a second, third, fourth stringer on a roster, that I don't even look at some of those players like depth. If we got to force you to get on the field and you know you're going to have limited results, then I don't even look at you like that. Dante says Darius is such a nice guy, all smiles and well-mannered. Wish him success. One of my favorite interviews of all time. Yeah, it's taken him a little while to get going, but I think he's going to be a good player in this league. I definitely do. Deilla says it's crazy how many concussions Aikman had, considering just how good his offensive line was for years. That speaks volumes on how the game was played, though, back in the day. Like, it was no holds bar back in the day. Them quarterbacks were taking hits like they never take today. So that's a big part of it, man. Like, just the way that the NFL has emphasized the rules to protect the quarterback, that stuff was not around back in the day. You could hit a quarterback low, you could hit a quarterback high, you could hit a quarterback late, all that shit. It didn't matter back in the day. Quarterback throw an interception, you could blindside block him and lay him out, no problem. And all those things have changed. B-Rock says, we all miss leg day with the smiles. I forget, damn, why can't I think of homie's name, man? A lot of people were hating on him because I can't remember his name. Maybe when we get back next stream, I'll look him up. Let me see. What else we got here? A lot of people give Marjorie her props. A couple more, and then we'll get up out of here, man. Shout out to everybody for tuning in today, rocking out with us. I knew that this was going to be like it's one of those shows that it didn't feel like we necessarily needed 2 hours, but I knew it was going to be 2 hours with, just a lot of the changes offensively, especially from Mike Kafka, from Brian Dable and whatnot. Big shout out to Les 2K6 in the building, says we really need a mean and tough middle linebacker or safety to set the tone on defense, like how Scat, Leak, and Jackson Dart's physicality sets the tone on offense. We do. We absolutely need that. To get back to New York Giants football, you need somebody that places fear in the eyes of the opponent. Who is that defensively right now? I'd say Dexter Lawrence, possibly a little bit. Brian Burns for sure, And that's really it. There's not many other players on the defensive side of the ball that place that fear. And even with Brian Burns, I don't think it's necessarily a fear thing. It's just that Brian Burns is playing really good football. But I don't think it's like a fear thing like, man, Brian Burns about to fuck me up. I don't think it's quite there yet. But you definitely need those players, man. And, I don't know why people try to change the game. Like, as much as the game has changed, right, from a rules perspective, from the build of these players and, just like the weight and the way guys are designed at, let's say, edge rusher, or the way guys are designed at the quarterback position now, whatever it may be. I went back and I looked at some 1970s games, actually, about 2 weeks ago from the New York Giants. I looked at the Philadelphia Eagles game from Week 10 from 1970, and I looked at a couple of other clips from the 80s from some of those teams with Carl Banks, and just seeing Carl's role on those 80s teams. And listen, man, the game is not that different, man. It really is not that different. And I tweeted it out right when I saw it in the 70s. Yeah, you got wide receivers lining up with a three-point stance, and yeah, that shit's crazy. But at the end of the day, the game is still the game. And all too often, people try to change that. The person that's going to be in the middle, the center of your defense, I don't care what Joe Shane says. I don't care what anybody who's on this progressive NFL passing philosophy says. Your middle linebacker is always going to be important. Your safeties in this game are always going to be important. Your last line of defense, they're always going to be important. And if you have a safety that can place that fear in the eyes of your running backs on the opposing team, or wide receivers going across the middle, it's going to make things that much more easier for your defense. And the Giants, as Les is saying here, we ain't got those guys. It's unfortunate. We just don't got those guys. You know what I'm saying? Simeon says football will always be a collision sport. You must have defenders that love the big collision. Yeah. And we talked about this. I don't know if you were here for it, Simeon, when we brought up Tyler Nubin's All-22 tape. And if you haven't seen it, for anybody listening right now, check it out. It's on our page a couple of videos back. It's just all his plays on defense going up against the outside zone. He looks like a guy that don't want to tackle, man. And I hate to say that I just hate to say that, like that. You don't want to say that about an NFL player. Like, bro, you look scared. But he looks scared, man. He looks scared. And for those listening, again, I encourage y'all, it's a short 2-3 minute video. Check it out. And you tell me in the comment section if you think that's a guy that's out there that's trying to, find a collision. Like, I don't know if y'all saw the play. I had a couple of my homies that are actually texting me right now. Matt Gay fired by the Washington Commanders. But my homies were talking about this play from the tight end. Is it Dontrell Washington from the Pittsburgh Steelers? That he had a play this past weekend where he's just bully ball. Just catches the ball. First dude, get out of here. Second dude, shoulder lowered on him, ran him over. He's about to go out of bounds, smacks another dude. His whole play was just predicated on just straight up looking for the collision, right? Like how Brandon Jacobs was, right? You can remember the play with Brandon Jacobs against the Washington Redskins at the team with LaRon Landry. And it's basically like Brandon Jacobs has a clear hole, goes right through the hole, gets to the second level, and it's me versus you. And when I say it's me versus you, it's Brandon Jacobs versus LaRon Landry. They looked at each other and was like, yeah, I'm going right at you. Brandon Jacobs, looking for the contact, straight ran that man the fuck over. We don't got those guys on this team, right? We're getting a couple of them, it seems, with Cam Scatterboo and guys like Dart, but you really don't want your quarterback setting the tone with that type of demeanor. You want that tone to be set with the other players that are surrounding the quarterback so that the quarterback don't got to go out there and do it. But the Giants, unfortunately, just don't have a guy that does that. So Jackson Dart, as the leader of this team, feels like he has to go out there and go ahead and do that. And in return, it's kind of putting him in harm's way and taking him off the field. Greg Turhaller said, oh, no, Authentic, don't ever watch 1970s Giants football games. Yeah, it was some bad ball, man. I think we might have won the game I watched. Did we win that game? I think we won that game, actually, and it was a turnover that helped us in the end of that game to beat the Philadelphia Eagles. DeIlla says, can we get our hands on a player that is the reincarnated version of Ray Lewis to play middle linebacker for us. Please, LOL. I love you put the LOL at that because those odds are definitely extremely tough. And I see B-Rog and Ja definitely agreeing with you on that. Ja said he wanted to clone the entire 2000 Ravens. Francis Moran says guys are incredible athletes now compared to the 70s, bigger, stronger, and faster. That is a fact. That is a fact. But it's still the same game. It's still the same game. We still got to drop back, throw the football, make completions, try to get yak, make explosive plays. You still got to run the ball. You still got to stop the run, which has been a staple in NFL or in football in general since we've been children. You know, when I was a kid and I played CYO ball, which was like the ghetto rec league around here and whatnot, like all they did was preach how we got to stop the run and run the ball, you know, and going up to the professional level, I don't think that changes that much. Greg said, go watch the 1956 NFL championship game. Now, that's Giants dominance at its finest. I'm going to do that when we get off air. I got a pretty free day, but a really fucking busy week this week, man. I got a ton of clients coming in to cut vocals this week. It's like they all hit me up in one go. But when I get off, I'll go check it out for sure, most definitely. Simeon said, we are the Giants. We cannot have players that don't want to hit. You would think, right, that like the person up top would be operating with this same philosophy in mind. Like, you see a guy on the field that don't want to hit, man, get that guy off the field, bro. Get him off the field. But instead, you know, we're like investing in these draft picks that have not been panning out and just letting them continuously go out there and make mistakes. It's unfortunate. Shout out my dog Dante, said, man, I have some all-22 on my page of him in college. He was never my favorite. He had interceptions, but he was not a true safety on film. He's talking about Tyler Nubin. And I was talking with my homie Cross today. Cross brought up like an old receipt where we were talking about Cam Kinchins and we were talking about Tyler Nubin. And I wanted Cam Kinchins in the later rounds. Like, when I looked at my draft philosophy, safety was not going to be a position that I would draft in the second round. But when we did draft Tyler Nubin, I looked at it like this is a win-win situation. This is the best safety in the draft, according to a lot of people. And I thought that was the case too. When you looked at the numbers and you looked at the tape, I thought it kind of supported it. But the biggest question for me was his speed, because he was a guy that was relying on anticipation to make a lot of those plays. I think it was 13 interceptions in his collegiate career. And he just didn't have the speed. You can't do that in the NFL. You have to be more disciplined. And in return, this guy has, I want to say, has 0 PBUs still. And he definitely has 0 interceptions in his career so far. And Cam Kinchins is playing much better football right now. I thought that Tyler Nubin was going to be a more viable option to be a day one starter than Cam Kinchins was. But I liked Cam Kinchins' value late in the draft. And I thought he could bring, you know, some really good productivity to the Giants defense. But a lot of people focused on his the passer rating that he had allowed in his last season at Miami, and it wasn't great. But yeah, you know, you got to live and learn. And that's one that, you know, I didn't want to draft a safety in the second round. That's just a mistake right there. And the only reason why that happened is because 2 of the cornerbacks that Joe Shane wanted, they flew off the board right before we went to go pick that year. Kamari Lassiter and I can't remember who the other one was, but there was 2 corners we were eyeing that year. Unfortunate, man. Unfortunate. I wish I knew you back then, because I love when somebody can like push back against an opinion that I have when I've done the research and give me reasoning as to that. It would have been nice to have an opinion that contrasted back then, but me and Dante weren't talking too much before the draft. Yeah, Dilla talking about Amon Bradshaw. Yup. Mm-hmm. You know, not only talking about Brandon Jacobs, Amon Bradshaw used to lower the shoulder as well and lower the boom. Shout out to Easy is Cool. 34, he said, what I don't understand is Shane Bowen's expertise was stopping the run in Tennessee. And that, I think, you got to look at the personnel. I think that goes back to some of the explanation that I did early on in the show. The personnel, when you look at Brian Burns, Kayvon Thibodeau, Abdul Carter, all 3 of them are built basically exactly the same. They're all undersized to be a true traditional defensive end in the league. So if you have one of them on your team, okay. When you have 3 of them on your team, yeah, it's just not a great recipe for high-level results. B-Rog says they have better film. If the coaching staff is what he's talking about, they have better film. If we can tell a player doesn't want contact, the coaches must see it on film. They got to see it. They got to see it, man. They have to. There's no way they're not seeing it. Timmy Foosball said, better athletes than the 70s, yet the players now get more injuries playing in a much softer game. They spend millions on their bodies. Back in the day, they smoked a cig at halftime, and had a couple of brews sometimes before the game as well. Or in like a guy like Lawrence Taylor's case, probably taking a couple of bumps maybe before the game as well. The thing is, the game is faster, and I think that's why a lot of players get, injured more frequently nowadays. But better athletes than the 70s. I think that the general level, right, like the average level of athlete is much better now. The discrepancy between the best players and the worst players back in the day was a lot larger of a gap, that's for sure. Nova says that he had 1 PBU from last season. And he also said it's sad because I believe Tyler Nubin was actually a more willing tackler and would actually come crashing down in the box last season. I still got to go back and look at last season. And it's an easy task. I'm going to go ahead and do that and see if I can make a comparison to what we put out there this year and see if it aligns, because you don't just go from being a big hitter to not being a big hitter. And I can only speak on the level of football that I played, which was up to high school, but like dogs that I knew, like, shout out to my homie Ajibade. When we were kids, me and Ajibade grew up. And by the time we got to high school, we went to different elementary schools, different middle schools, but by the time we got to high school, we went to the same high school. And we were both competing for the quarterback job when we got to JV. And I ultimately ended up winning the job, and then I broke my collarbone. But my homie Ajibade, the dude was a hitter since we were like 7 years old. He was laying people out. By the time we got to JV, and I swear to God, this is not made up, we were playing this school, Walter Johnson, and he was playing tight end. I'll never forget this shit. We used to have this play called a tight end looking, where your quarterback just grabs the ball, boom, right to the tight end. You're hoping that the linebackers step up and you just throw it right, you whiz it past him. He caught the ball, got a one-on-one matchup with the safety, literally laid him out. This was back when they didn't call spearing and shit like that, but he put the top of his helmet dead into this dude's chest. And we're talking about from the offensive side of the ball. The ambulance had to come out there and come on the field and come pick this kid up. And as they were driving the ambulance off to take that kid to the hospital, this kid I'm talking about, Ajibade, from the defensive side of the ball playing safety, laid out another kid. The ambulance had to U-turn before they even got out of the parking lot and come pick this other kid up. If you got that hitter in your DNA, it normally lives in your DNA. And you'll normally turn into a player that's going to get injured before you start being out there and being timid. So I don't know, man. Like I don't have the experience up there on the collegiate level or on the professional level, obviously. But I never met dudes that were hitters like on a lower level of football, and then as they climb the ranks, they're not a hitter anymore. It's really puzzling with Tyler Nubin, but I'm going to go back and check. I'm going to go back and look at some of the games I had from him at Minnesota as well and see if, some of those characteristics were in his game before he got to the New York Giants. Dante says, Kinchins was underwhelming, but he was significantly more talented. And that's kind of what I thought, and allowed some of the numbers to possibly get into the way of the evaluation, which happens at times. Every year I evaluate positions, I learn more. The first year that I truly went and dug into the quarterbacks, I learned so much from that first year, because all too often we just look at the prospects that we think might land on our team. But I kind of feel like I have a bigger responsibility up here with this platform to look into more than just quarterbacks and look at more than just players that are going to be drafted by my team. Jaji05 says, the more I think about it, was it Bowen, or was it Vrabel in Tennessee's defensive success at the time? Think about it. Belichick had those defenses in New England. Clear it wasn't Matt Patricia. Carl Banks is basically on like a press run for Matt Patricia right now, trying to bring him in as the next defensive coordinator for the New York Giants and talking about a lot of the success that he has had on both levels. I got to go and, confirm if, the research he's done aligns with some of the research that I've done as well. But there's no doubt about it that Vrabel had at least some of the responsibility for the success that Shane Bowen saw when he was with the Tennessee Titans. And they also had Dick LeBeau over there as well. So, a lot of Shane Bowen's scheme comes from the both of them. So that's a fact. That's definitely a fact. Dante said, Lee Dawson, a picture of him smoking a cigarette and drinking a soda at halftime, is being hung up in my new office as we speak. That's crazy that we're talking about that. And here we are with Dante hanging up the picture in his office right now. Shout out Easy is Cool. He says, are we scared of the underdevelopment of Carter, or is it premature? Kayvon hasn't lived up to the hype either. Serviceable, yes, but playing like a depth piece. Yeah, that's true. That's definitely true. And only time will tell about how these players get developed. But I do think that the beginnings of Abdul Carter show more signs of life than the beginnings of Kayvon Thibodeau. Thibodeau was a guy that, one, he started off the year, his rookie year, injured. So he missed like the first 4 games. And we didn't get a full sample size of him until Wink Martindale came here. And then he became the first player in a Wink Martindale scheme to have double-digit sacks. So I like where Kayvon is at, man. The injuries are definitely kicking his butt right now. You want to see him continue to develop and get better, along with the rest of the guys on this defensive front as well. But I do think that Abdul Carter is a little bit ahead of where Kayvon Thibodeau was at this particular point in time. And we'll take this last one, and then we'll get up out of here. Let me see. I'll take 2 more because I do want to see what Dante's saying here. Dante said corners is my roughest evaluation, which is weird because I got quarterbacks down a lot. Christian Gonzalez humbled me because I thought he was going to be dog shit. Damn, that's wild right there. Yeah, DB is difficult, man. Like, you always think that a DB is going to come out and be a guy at least from each class, and that's not always the case. I'm just trying to think back to this particular class. Like, I was a big fan of Kobe Bryant. I liked Trey Amos, who's dealing with that injury. I didn't list that when I was talking about the Washington Commanders, but I like Trey Amos. He was a good player. What about the kid? What was that kid's name? Ravel? What happened to Ravel? Who drafted him? He's another one. You know what? I got to go back to my board and just give an update. Maybe we do a stream where we just talk about draft update, because there were so many players that we had talked about during the lead-up process to the draft that now we need a little bit of an update on those players. But, yeah, DB is difficult, man. Corners are difficult. Linebackers are difficult for me as well. A lot of positions, man. Like, when you see a guy like Ladd McConkey come out of Georgia and he only has like 35 receptions, it's so hard to gauge what that guy's going to turn into. He was another one that I slept on pretty heavy that, has had a good start to his career. Running backs, probably quarterback and running back are the easier ones for me. Like, I had R.J. Harvey way up there on my board. Bashul Tootin was another one we had extremely high on the board. Marion Hampton, obviously. Travion Henderson, both the Ohio State running backs, yeah. Quarterback, running back, a little bit easier now. Quarterback was still a little difficult for me, but, like, I've learned with quarterback, I got to go with my gut. That the gut instinct, the tape's cool. Once you check the boxes, mechanics, upper body mechanics, arm strength, velocity across the middle, intermediate throws, all that stuff, then I like to go off just feel. Like, does this guy seem like – that's why I'm worried about I don't know if you're going to like this, Dante, but that's why I'm worried about Fernando Mendoza a little bit. Like, checks the boxes with the mechanics and all that stuff. That's the quarterback out of Indiana, for those of y'all that don't know. But I got to see him in person, and, like, it's a little bit too vanilla. It's too regular for me. Like, there's no characteristic that just stands way out. Like, the deep ball is not that crazy. The velocity is not all that crazy, but I do like his timing. Plays within structure, gets the ball out of his hands quick. But right now, he's looking like one of the better quarterbacks coming out. So we'll see. And De'Illa doubled down, and he said, yeah, corner is a very difficult position, or different position to predict if the talent will translate. Yes, it's super tough, man. Easy says, this is the last one I'll take too. Easy said, do you think if we had some better corners that some of these pressures from Carter would actually be sacks? But, yeah, some of them would be, for sure. But, like, quarterbacks are going to find a way to get rid of the ball, and throw the ball out of bounds or throw it at a wide receiver's feet and stuff like that. But, yeah, I do think that if we had better corners, it would help. But, you could look at that on the flip side too. Like, our corners would be better if our defensive line was getting more pressure as well, right? You could look at it like that as well. Yeah, it's definitely, it's hard to gauge, man. It's hard to gauge when both units are not performing to the level that we want them to. Let me see. Dante responded. He said, oh, yeah, we got that one. We did get that one. Holmes with Jay. Let me just see. I'm going to just round this out. I'm just seeing what everybody talking. He says, if we continue to hold Kayvon, he'll lose value. We should flip him while he looks good. Carter's production will also rise once he's gone. Possibly. Still going to be a liability in the run if we can't fix some things, as far as how we're trying to stop the run. Let me see. Dante said, I loved Kobe and Mello Dotson. Mello Dotson wasn't on my radar. He also said that Ravel is starting tonight for the Cowboys. He's been injured. That's what's up, man. That's right, because they did go out there and get him. And that was after drafting, what's my dog from Wake Forest? Kalen Carson? Is it Kalen Carson? You know the DB I'm talking about out of Wake Forest who dealt with injuries. He was drafted the year before Ravel. Interesting. Can't wait. I'm going to definitely have my eyes on him tonight. Definitely can't wait to see that one. Let me see. Nova says that Wink was the coordinator for Kayvon's rookie season, and yeah, he missed his first 2 games with the sprained MCL. Was it just 2 games? I thought it was more than that for some reason. I remember it was Randy Moss's son that took him out in the preseason. Could be wrong. I thought it was more than 2 games. He says he was one of 7 players on the team to miss games with the sprained MCL that season. Damn. And Dante said Ravel was his number 1 corner. That's going to be great to see him tonight. What's going on, Sarah? It's been a minute. Sarah said, I told my Packers friends their quarterback is a traitor. He's an undercover Giants fan and does a Giants podcast every week. Big salute to Sarah in the building, yo. The Vikings, man, y'all are in a tough spot right now. A lot of questions surrounding your quarterback right now. A lot of people don't have belief in J.J. McCarthy. I'm still on the bandwagon a little bit. Definitely still on the bandwagon a little bit. I'm hoping that he plays well. All right, let me see. Dante said, I agree. Mendoza's not high for me. He's the ultimate game manager. But Omar Cooper is Malik Neighbors 2.0. Whew. All right, that's another one I got to add to the list then, brother. That's another one I got to add to the list. Man, that might be one. Hold on. I love me some pass catchers, man. That's one of my favorites, bro. Quarterbacks and pass catchers, bro, is absolutely where it is at for me. All right, let's check that out once we get off live. Let's see. Chris P says Caleb Downs is in the first. Yeah, that's what it's looking like. Okay, he said that was supposed to say difficult. Phone changed it up. Different worked. You saw like my mind was telling me to say difficult, but I saw different. But I hear you. I definitely hear you. Yeah, Kalen Carson. That's who that was. That was definitely Kalen Carson. Off Broadway's questioning a little bit here. He says, Omar Cooper looks good, but is he a result of the system? And Dante said, definitely not. He's a dog. All right, I'm going to look into him today. Most definitely. Holmes with Jay said Omar Cooper or Tyson. Dante says Omar. Man, I can't wait to get to the prospect portion of the season here, man. I cannot wait. But that's going to do it, man. Salute to you guys rocking out 2 hours, man. We had to come up here and do our due diligence for the New York Giants. Dante, I see that too. I'll definitely check him out. Let me see. That's Joseph Manjack out of TCU. I'll be a little weary about them TCU wide receivers. I'm sure you know why. But some of these guys are definitely breaking that narrative. So let's see, Manjack. I see y'all suggesting a bunch of folks. I'll check them out. Let me just take a couple of notes before we close out here. Harold Perkins Jr. I'll check them out too. All right. Yeah, man. I'm telling y'all, go subscribe. Go right now. And go subscribe to East Coast Gridiron right now. They know ball over there, man. Yeah. Money Mitch know ball too. Carnell Tate is a dog. Definitely a dog. But that's where we're going to end the show, man. Salute to all of you guys, man. I hope today helped you, just get through your day a little bit faster, even though that shouldn't always be the goal to get through the day faster. But sometimes, after a big New York Giants loss, we want to just kind of have, a little bit of content to speed us through the week and whatnot, man. So big salute to you guys for rocking out with us today, man. Dante, we still got to make that happen before the season ends. I definitely want to get you up here. Maybe we just push it off till we get to talking about some prospects, because I know that's where you shine, and that's been one of your, one of your gems on your channel is how you evaluate prospects. But maybe we'll get there one time. But man, we got a lot of football left, and unfortunately for us, that's not really a good thing, because we are definitely, out of the mix here. We won't be making the playoffs this year. Probably going to have a top 5 pick. And currently, as it stands right now, the New York Giants have the number 2 overall pick in the 2026 NFL draft. So just hang in there, y'all, and try to be as patient as you possibly can. It's been I wanted to say it's been a blessing, but it's been my blessing to be able to come up here and talk ball with y'all this much. And even when the New York Giants are losing, we still have, a foundation of solid things to talk about with this team. So salute to y'all, man, because coming up here and being able to talk New York Giants ball with y'all that's one of my passions right now. And it's one of, my favorite things to do on a weekly basis. Just being able to live football the way that I have the last, 6 years, 7 years up here with you guys has been amazing. And it's led to a lot of opportunity. And I think it will continue to lead to more opportunities, in the future. And I'm looking forward to that. And we got big things planned. I'm already thinking about how we're going to raise the bar as soon as the season is done. And there is a part of me that feels like, I can't wait for it to get here because I want to be able to present those upgrades to the channel and start bringing some new vibes and things like that to the Authentic and the Beard community. And shout out to the Beard man who's been doing a fantastic job of helping us keep this channel afloat, after just having a baby, which is that's not an easy thing. And he didn't have the baby, but he made the baby, we'll say. But salute to him and salute to y'all. This is, again, it's my blessing to be able to come up here and chop it up with so many people that are knowledgeable about the game and that see the game in a similar facet that I do and that, aren't just these fair weather fans that come out every year and think we're going to win 11 games and there is some kind of realistic approach to the way that we root for our team. I'll take the quote from my homegirl Arabia. She said just a couple of weeks ago that it's just a great statement to live by, in my opinion, as a fan, is just because I'm a fanatic does not mean that I cannot be pragmatic. And that is the way I like to approach the New York Giants. And, hopefully, we get to a point where we can be overly optimistic and we can approach seasons like, the Kansas City Chiefs, who during the Patrick Mahomes era have never had a record under 5-5 after 10 games. That's a luxury. And I'm hoping that we can get to that point. I see a spark of life just popped up, man. You might want to rewind the stream. Check it out, man. This was a good 2 hours, and there was a lot of data in this stream, and a lot of good just thoughts and statements from the chat in this stream, man. Just, shout out to Greg the Turd Hauler again. Love the name, 1. And 2, he was just cooking today in this stream. Dante, DeIlla, we went over some things that went full circle. Salute to all of y'all. Marjorie with the bombs. Like, we got the greatest community over here. And I don't purposely mean to like leave off no names or anything like that. Like, y'all are all a big, big, big foundation of what we do over here, man. So salute to all of y'all, man. I hope y'all enjoy, the rest of your Monday afternoon. And as we get off into the holidays and whatnot, I hope y'all aren't working too hard. You know what I'm saying? Like, because as we get to the holidays, I know a lot of people got families, a lot of people got kids, and that's when the kids are going to be relying on us adults the most. And sometimes that stress can be a little bit overwhelming. And as I preach to y'all, have patience with the New York Giants. Also have patience with yourself, man. Don't apply too much pressure to yourself. Take it easy, man, one day at a time, man. Y'all know how it is. This shit can be tough out here in this economy. I know how it is. And, just don't let the stresses get to you too much. And I hope that when we come up here and we talk ball for 2 hours, that is just a little bit of an inkling to help you get through your day that much better, man. So, as much as, I know a lot of people rely on this content on a Monday, at the same time, I personally, as the content creator, I rely on coming up here and being able to talk ball with y'all so that by the time we're done these couple of hours here on the Giant Overreaction, I can approach the rest of my week a little bit more level-headed. And I've learned a lot from y'all, man. You guys have definitely encouraged me to be choosy with the way that I argue about the New York Giants. And that trickles into my social media a little bit more, where it's like some of these battles, it's just not worth it. Save it for the people that deserve it. And all of the people that are still here in this chat right now are the people that deserve it. So big salute to all of y'all, man. I definitely appreciate you guys. Like, from the bottom of my heart, it definitely means a lot. This will be a week that likely we will not be doing a stream either tomorrow or on Wednesday, but we should be back on Thursday for a Week 12 preview. And again, man, it's not getting no easier with the Detroit Lions coming up next week and then the New England Patriots. So it's going to be real tough, man. Shout out to Holmes with Jay. I see you, fam. You a real one as well. All of y'all that pull up to these streams on a weekly basis, like, I understand that has to do with something that we have in common. Because I'm an avid YouTube watcher. Like, I watch a ton of content. within every one of my niches, like whether it be football, whether it be cinematography, whether it be audio engineering, whether it be just life advice. You know, I'm all about the content that will put me in a better direction in my life. So I'm always looking at some of this stuff. And I know what it takes to be invested in somebody that like, yo, when this video drop, I got the notifications on, I'm subbed up, I ain't trying to miss shit. I know what that's like. So even without y'all speaking it into existence, you wouldn't even have to. Just y'all presence here as my homie Premium Pete. And I talked to Premium Pete today, man. His son, he's about, I want to say his son probably about somewhere around like 9 years old. But, man, he's running touchdowns in the flag football league going crazy. And I saw it on his page, and I hit him up, and I was like, man, son's going crazy, man. And he sent me some blessings on this Monday morning. And the statement that we end every one of our shows with comes from a podcast that Premium Pete was a part of. But he also says on that podcast, he said it a ton, like presence over presence, like your presence over the gifts that you bear when you come around people and whatnot. And he really says that to fathers mainly, but I think that's something that we can apply to life, man. Like just showing up is so important. And you guys showing up week in and week out for me, that means the world, man. So we're going to leave that there. Y'all know how we end every show over here on Authentic in the Beard. Keep raising the bar. Keep living those dreams because the universe flows in Technicolor and surround sound, and a life without dreams is a life in black and white. Rest in peace to the podcast GOAT and New York legend, Combat Jack. And that is a wrap, y'all. Hope y'all enjoy the rest of y'all Monday evening. Go get some grub, eat good, smoke good, live good. I'll catch y'all on the flip side, man. It was absolutely my pleasure to come up here and get to talk New York Giants ball with y'all. Hope y'all got something from the stream. I'll catch y'all on the flip side. Everybody stay blessed, y'all. Peace.